Hey guys, tonight we start somewhere hot, dusty, and slightly olive-scented ancient Greece, the birthplace of democracy philosophy and accidentally inventing public nudity as an aesthetic. You probably picture golden temples, clever debates, and statues that look like they've never known the agony of a stubbed toe. But let's drop the toga-tinted glasses. Tonight, you're not an honored guest. You're just another ancient Greek trying not to faint in your own home. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up not to an alarm clock, but to the sun punching you through a paper-thin wall. Your house, if you can call it that, is made of mud brick. It traps heat with all the grace of an abandoned clay oven. Privacy, not in this economy. You, your siblings, your parents, and maybe an uncle or two share the same room. If someone snores, everyone suffers. There are no windows, just wooden shutters that creak like they resent being opened. The air smells like dust, sweat, and the faintest trace of yesterday's boiled lentils. You sit up slowly, your limbs stiff from sleeping on a straw mattress that pokes more than it cushions. You scratch at a bug bite and try not to think about where that bug came from. The first sound you hear is your neighbor's goat relieving itself just outside your door. The second is your mother yelling at someone for spilling the olive oil ration. And that's before breakfast. You glance toward the doorway, just a cloth curtain swaying in the breeze, and realize the street outside is already alive. Not lively in the fun way. Alive in the someone is loudly dumping a chamber pot way. You step outside barefoot because your sandals snapped last week, and there's no such thing as Amazon Prime. The ground is warm, already coated with dry earth-cracked tiles and the occasional fish scale. The agora is a few streets over, but the smell travels faster than news. You wrinkle your nose, but your stomach growls anyway. You haven't eaten, but you're sweating. The tunic you're wearing, if it even counts as clothing, is more of a glorified curtain cinched with a belt. It's clinging in all the wrong places and barely stays in place when you move. The moment you reach up to scratch your scalp, it shifts just enough for a breeze to make things indecent. Again, you trudge to the shared fountain where 5 other people are already drawing water. You rinse your face in cold splashes, watching the dirt smear rather than disappear. There's no soap. There's oil olive mostly, which you'll use later to scrape off the grime. That's considered a bath. And it's not just accepted. It's fashionable. Someone beside you sneezes. Loud. No one blesses them. Instead, 3 women take a half step away and make a subtle gesture to ward off miasma, the ancient equivalent of hand sanitizer and side-eye. The fear isn't baseless. A sneeze could mean a cold, or it could mean something worse. In a world without antibiotics, even a cough sounds like a warning bell. Back inside, your little sister is already up and chasing a chicken with a bowl of leftover barley. Your father is squatting in the corner, patching a sandal with a bone needle. everyone is talking at once about fish prices, local gossip, the neighbor's strange cough, and yet no one is actually listening. You sit on a rough stool and gnaw at a piece of barley bread so dry you wonder if it's a family heirloom. It's dipped in wine, slightly watered down. Not because you're fancy, but because water isn't always safe to drink unless it's mixed with something vaguely antiseptic. You're technically hydrating, barely. As you chew, you stare at the clay wall across from you. It's adorned with a faded drawing, maybe Athena, maybe your cousin's idea of Athena, and the dull realization hits. This is the best part of your day. The moment before everything gets harder. You're already tired. You haven't done anything yet. And yet there's a rhythm to it all. A kind of dusty, uncomfortable beauty. The way the sunlight slants through the cracks, the warm buzz of flies around the door frame, the thrum of people already arguing in the street. The world outside feels too awake for how exhausted you are. Historians still argue whether most Greeks lived in poverty or something closer to functional discomfort. What's clear is that most people weren't philosophers in white robes. They were farmers, potters, herders, or just barely getting by. They didn't write the plays or sculpt the statues. They built the stages and fetched the marble. As you step back outside to face the heat and whatever labor awaits you, realize something vital. Surviving a day here isn't about glory or heroism or winning a debate in the Agra. It's about not fainting before lunch. You step into the street, still chewing that ancient brick of barley bread, and the heat greets you like an angry god, the kind that doesn't need a reason. It's only mid-morning, but the sun is already bouncing off every stone surface, turning the narrow alleys into tiny ovens. Time for a bath, or at least the Greek version of it. Let's get one thing out of the way clean. In ancient Greece is not what you're used to. You're not scrubbing yourself with lavender body wash under a hot stream of pressurized luxury. You're scraping a mixture of oil and dirt off your skin with a curved metal tool called a strigil. Think of it like a spatula for your sweat. You head to the communal courtyard where a basin stands at the center, full of chilly, slightly cloudy water. It's not exactly inviting, but it beats staying salty and crusty all day. You splash your face again. No towels. You use your tunic hem and pretend it doesn't smell like goat. Next step, the oil. You reach for a clay pot of olive oil generously donated by whoever could afford it this week, or whoever was guilted into it. A slave helps pour it into your hands, and you begin rubbing it over your arms, chest, legs. No soap, remember. The oil is what cleans you. Sort of. It loosens the grime, then the strigil scrapes it off. You draw the bronze blade over your skin, slowly watching the gunk build on the edge. It's strangely satisfying, like peeling dried glue off your fingers. If you're lucky, the oil is fresh. If not, you try not to gag and pretend the sourness is just extra virgin funk. And yes, you're doing all this in full view of strangers. Modesty, while technically a virtue, loses the battle to sweat and practicality. Around you, other men grunt as they scrub, gossiping about politics crops, or which demigod statue looked particularly muscular this week. You overhear a debate about whether a lunar eclipse means Apollo is angry or just bored. One man insists it's a warning of war. Another says it's a bad omen for fish markets. Historians still argue whether ancient Greeks truly believed in these celestial omens or just liked the drama. Honestly, you suspect it's both. Meanwhile, women don't usually bathe here. Their bathing spaces are either inside wealthier homes or at separate facilities, and they're far more private. Or at least as private as anything can be when your walls are made of hopes and pottery shards. If you're female, your version of this bath might involve a cold jug of water poured by a sister, while you shiver behind a curtain that blows open every 5 seconds. Once you've scraped and oiled and rinsed again, your skin feels smoother, slippery actually, and the air against your bare chest almost makes the heat tolerable. Almost. You reach for your tunic again. The same one. Fresh clothes are a dream. You just shake out yesterday's dust and hope no beetles crawl out. The fabric sticks to your still damp skin, and the belt feels tighter than it did an hour ago. Either you're bloated, or the linen shrank in fear of the sun. There's a breeze now, but it's not kind. It barrels through the alley like a gossiping ant, flipping your tunic hem and exposing more leg than anyone asked for. You clutch the sides quickly, trying to look composed. Undergarments don't exist, at least not in the structured modern sense. You've got your tunic, your dignity, and a few pins or ties to hold everything together. Good luck. For women, the situation is even trickier. A loose peplos or chiton fastened at the shoulders with pins offers no support and a lot of wardrobe drama. If you bend over the wrong way or if one pin slips, you're offering the gods and the neighbors more than a prayer. There's no such thing as a bra, not even the ancient sports wrap version. Spartan girls might have trained bare-chested, but in Athens that's scandalous. You're expected to look graceful and invisible, preferably both at once. You finally grab your sandal strips of stiff leather, bound with hope, and slide them on. They chafe instantly. The right one strap is unraveling again. It flops slightly as you walk. You pretend not to care. If you're among the poorer citizens, and let's be real, you are, there's a good chance you don't even own sandals. Bare feet it is, which means every step is an act of faith and foot callous. You begin your walk toward the agora. The main road is a blend of sun-bleached stone and sludge from yesterday's fish market. Chickens dart in and out. A donkey brays angrily from an alley. Somewhere nearby, someone is playing a flute badly. You pass a statue of Athena. She looks impressive, distant, and maybe slightly judgmental. You offer a quick nod, just in case. The air is full of smells: roasting onions, warm bread, human funk, and something fishy that might be fish or just a metaphor for your luck. It's a living city, loud and chaotic, and strangely beautiful in its mess. You spot a child dragging a stick along the wall, creating a rhythm that other kids follow like it's a parade. An old man curses as one kicks dust into his sandals. Life keeps happening, whether or not you're ready for it. You tug at your tunic again. Still sticky, still shifting. You haven't even reached noon, and already you've been oiled, scraped, and nearly exposed to half the population. You take a deep breath and push onward. There's no turning back, not when the day has just begun and your stomach's already warning you about what comes next. You keep walking, sandals flapping, sweat creeping. The agora is just ahead, but first you need to brace for a bit of a breeze. Your tunic's already betrayed you once, and it's ready to do it again. You grip the hem with one hand like a warrior gripping a shield, determined not to flash your philosophical outlook to the whole marketplace. This is your outfit. This is everyone's outfit. There's no wardrobe variety. One tunic, maybe two if you're fancy. Nothing fitted. No zippers, no buttons, just pins and string and hope. Every gust of wind is a risk, every bend a scandal waiting to happen. Modesty isn't about fabric, it's about luck. You duck past a vendor sharpening bronze blades and pretend not to notice a group of girls laughing after you tripped on your own sandal strap. You mutter something about uneven cobblestones, but the cobblestones know the truth. And here's the twist. Your tunic is probably made of wool. Yes, wool. In this heat. Linen's better, sure, but it's more expensive. So instead of flowing in breezy elegance, you're swaddled in the same material used for winter cloaks. You are essentially slow roasting yourself. You tug at the belt, too tight, then too loose, then twisted. It's a daily game of which part of me will rebel next. As you turn onto the main road, the sun hits you square in the eyes. You squint, using your hand as a visor, and nearly walk into a cart full of figs. The merchant glares. You apologize with a sheepish smile and step around it right into something worse, a dried stain of something unidentifiable, but definitely once alive. The smell hits you before the memory forms. Too late. You gag quietly, then keep walking. You have to. This is just the price of existing here. Now let's talk feet. If you're lucky, and we mean lucky, you have sandals, thin soles, worn straps, and the constant sensation of something sharp wedging itself into your arch. They offer protection the way a napkin offers armor. If you're not lucky, you're barefoot, which means your feet are the soles of your soul-calloused, dirty, possibly infected, and constantly insulted by the terrain. The streets are stone, yes, but that doesn't mean they're clean. They double as trash dumps, urinals, and open sewer pathways. You can't even scream properly when you step on a fishbone because someone will just hand you a broom. Children run around barefoot like it's a game. Maybe it is. Maybe it's just that they haven't realized pain comes standard with age. A pebble lodges itself between your sandal and heel. You pause, wiggle, pretend it doesn't hurt, then give in and bend to fix it. Your tunic immediately shifts, and you perform the ancient Greek version of a squat and shuffle while preserving dignity. A nearby woman smirks. She's seen this dance before. Historians still argue whether the average Greek truly accepted discomfort as a civic duty, or if they just never had the option to complain. What's certain is that footwear was for the privileged. For everyone else, dirt was the fashion statement. Your toes now gritty, you finally reach the outskirts of the agora. It's not a marketplace in the modern sense. It's part flea market, part debate stage, part social media feed. Philosophers shout, merchants bark prices, children run underfoot, and someone is trying to convince a crowd that olives cure melancholy. You're not even sure what melancholy is, but he's got a good pitch. You dodge a runaway chicken and nearly collide with a man holding a lyre. He's mid-poem. You apologize, he doesn't pause. Poetry waits for no one. You spot a sandal repair stall and make a mental note to visit later if you have any coins left after buying dinner. The vendor is using catgut to sew new straps occasionally, pausing to flick flies away from a pile of goat leather. He waves, half smiling like he's seen your busted shoe situation from across the plaza. Your stomach rumbles loudly. Time to find food. You approach a stall with barley cakes and dried figs. The merchant eyes you warily. You barter, offering a chipped pot lid and a bitter coin. He shrugs, takes it, hands you a cake that crumbles like ancient plaster, and a handful of sticky figs. Not exactly a feast, but it'll get you through the next few hours. As you chew, a group of young men walk by, cloaks thrown dramatically over their shoulders, hair oiled and curled to perfection. They're headed to the gymnasium, of course, where they'll wrestle, discuss ethics, and show off their abs. You're just trying not to choke on fig seeds. You find a bit of shade under a cracked column, rest your back against it, and let out a long breath. The figs are sweeter than expected. That's a small win. But even in this quiet moment, your body reminds you your feet ache. Your back sticks to the column. Your tunic still smells like yesterday, and your hands are stained from scraping yourself clean with oil and bronze. And yet the city hums around you, a blend of chaos and rhythm. Children laugh, dogs bark. Someone yells about taxes. Life keeps going one dusty step at a time. The wind picks up again. Your tunic flutters just a little and you sigh. It's going to be a long day. And you're not even at the gymnasium yet. You leave the agora behind, licking fig syrup from your fingers, and follow the crowd heading toward the gymnasium. Not because you're particularly athletic. Let's be honest. Your biggest workout today was dodging chicken droppings, but because showing up is expected. Gymnasiums in ancient Greece aren't just places to lift weights. They're the beating heart of Greek male society, and they're also mostly naked. Surprise! The word gymnos literally means nude. And that's exactly how you're expected to train, stripped down, slicked with oil, in full view of peers, teachers, and the occasional judgmental philosopher. It's hard to pretend you're a stoic when you're slipping on a sweat-slicked wrestling mat. You enter through a shaded colonnade and immediately catch the scent of linseed oil ash and the musky perfume of exertion. Dozens of bodies, lean, hairy, bruised, are stretching, sparring, or deep in conversation. It's loud, it's sweaty, and it's absolutely not optional. As a male citizen, physical training is part of your education. Doesn't matter if you dream of reading scrolls all day, everyone learns to fight. From the age of 7, boys train their bodies as well as their minds. 2 years of military service come later, but even now, you're expected to wrestle like a hero and look presentable doing it. You remove your tunic self-conscious, despite knowing everyone else is doing the same. Your body is functional, sure, but you still flinch at the idea of slipping in front of Cleon, the local golden boy with abs sculpted by the gods and an ego to match. A slave approaches and hands you a small flask of oil. You nod in thanks and begin rubbing it into your arms and shoulders. It's part preparation, part ritual, and entirely slippery. You're now shiny enough to qualify as a reflective surface. Someone calls your name. It's your neighbor's cousin, the one who always tries to wrestle you into submission as a greeting. Before you can protest, he lunges. You grunt, pivot, and attempt not to face plant into the dirt courtyard. You fail spectacularly. A few chuckles rise from the crowd. Your opponent offers a hand and a grin which somehow hurts more than the fall. "Come on," he says. "Socrates trained here too." You're too winded to respond, but yes, it's true. Even the greatest minds of Greece weren't allowed to skip gym class. Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle all believed in the balance of body and mind. You can't just think your way out of a war. And in Greece, there's always a war. Historians still argue whether this obsession with physical perfection was more about health or hierarchy. Either way, it leaves you with sore limbs and bruised pride. You're given a short break and collapse under a fig tree for shade. The leaves cast dancing shadows across your arms. Bees buzz lazily around nearby flowering herbs. Somewhere, a lyre is being plucked with enough skill to make you almost forget your throbbing shoulder. Then someone throws a discus past your head, and you remember you're very much not in a painting. A voice rises nearby, a teacher lecturing a group of boys on the virtues of moderation. "A man must train his body," he says, "but also his soul." The boys nod, some with glazed expressions, others mimicking the movements of their favorite athletes as if virtue can be stretched into muscle. You know the drill: discipline, control, excellence, the holy trinity of Greek masculinity. And yet moderation seems in short supply when a teenage boy next to you is trying to lift a stone twice his body weight. Your thighs are sore, your left wrist tingles from that awkward fall, and your ego is hiding under the bench, quietly weeping into a fig leaf. Still, you get up when the next instructor calls, because it's not about winning. It's about being seen trying. Not training means you're soft. Soft means lazy. Lazy means unfit to speak in the assembly, let alone serve in the phalanx. And the phalanx, the tightly packed formation of Greek soldiers, isn't optional either. Whether you're a potter poet or baker's son, war finds you. It's only a matter of time before you're handed a shield the size of a small door and told to stand in a line with your neighbors, hoping the guy next to you didn't skip leg day. Even philosophers fought. Socrates served as a hoplite marching across rocky terrain in full armor, holding the line not with witty retorts, but with a spear and shield. His courage in battle was praised even by those who thought his ideas were nonsense. You remind yourself of this as you lift a training spear for drills. The instructor barks commands. Your arms shake. Your feet slip. Someone snickers. You persevere. You spend the next hour lunging, bracing, sweating. The ground turns to dust beneath your feet. Your vision blurs with heat. The sun seems to hum in your ears. Finally, the drill ends. You slump against a pillar breath, coming in bursts. A few boys laugh and slap each other's backs. Others are already talking politics or mimicking the latest tragic play they saw in the theater. You just try not to collapse. It's midday now. You've been up for hours, scraped with bronze, nearly depantsed by the wind, tackled by your neighbor's cousin, and introduced to the full-body ache of public gymnasium life. You have survived the training grounds barely, but don't rest too long, because lunch is coming, and in ancient Greece, even eating can be a test of your patience, your manners, and your digestive luck. You limp away from the gymnasium, still glistening with leftover oil and bruised from too much enthusiastic education. The sun is a merciless overseer, now hovering just past its peak, baking the streets, the stones, and your will to live. You squint through the brightness, your stomach growling like Cerberus's smallest but most persistent head. It's lunchtime, or what passes for it. You cut through a narrow alley to avoid the worst of the crowds, ducking beneath lines of drying cloth and dodging a child with a wooden sword who yells Persian as he smacks your knee. You hiss through your teeth and keep walking. You're not in the mood to debate history with a 6-year-old revolutionary. Lunch, like most meals here, is simple. Bread, olives, maybe some cheese if it hasn't melted into goo. Wine always watered down, because drinking it straight marks you as either a barbarian or someone with deep emotional issues. You'd sell a finger for a decent grape leaf wrap. But unless you're among the elite or celebrating a festival, forget variety. You finally arrive at a shaded courtyard where a few families have gathered. Someone is passing around bowls of lentil stew. It's lukewarm and smells vaguely medicinal, but it's food. You get a portion and sit on the edge of a cracked marble step. There's no such thing as a table unless you're rich, and no chairs unless you stole one from a symposium. You dip stale barley bread into the stew. It disintegrates instantly, leaving you to scoop up sad spoonfuls of lentil sludge. It's not bad, just gray, earthy, like someone cooked a handful of dirt and whispered protein at it. Around you, people talk between bites. Trade disputes, upcoming festivals, complaints about the new tax collector who smells like onions and fear. No one talks about flavor. Food here is for surviving, not savoring. Across the way, a goat escapes its tether and begins munching on someone's laundry. No one stops it. The cloth was probably sweat-stained anyway. The owner sighs and mutters something about divine punishment. You nod sympathetically and keep eating. You look down at your bowl and wonder, not for the first time, if this is how heroes fueled their quests. Probably not. But it was how most people lived, quietly, hungrily, without epics being written about their struggle to digest boiled chickpeas. Historians still argue whether the average Greek diet was healthy or simply a result of necessity. Sure, they had olive oil, legumes, and wine, components of what modern scientists now praise as the Mediterranean diet. But they also had long stretches of food scarcity, unpredictable harvests, and the ever-looming threat of famine. Nutrition wasn't balanced. It was whatever you could get. You finished your meal and are chewing on a bit of hard cheese when a pair of older men nearby begin arguing loudly about which city-state makes better garum. You weren't even aware Athens had its own fish sauce scene. They slap the stone bench for emphasis, the cheese creaks in your jaw, and suddenly you feel both full and slightly nauseous. You stand, stretch, and burp softly into your hand. Then you realize the next part of your day awaits errands. You head back through the Agra, stopping by a vendor selling threadbare tunics. You finger the cloth and wince it's rougher than the one you're currently wearing. You ask the price anyway. The merchant laughs. You nod, pretending it was a joke you were also in on. On the way out, you pass a group of boys kicking a pig bladder like a ball. It bounces off a column and smacks you square in the back. They laugh. You turn and glare, then remember, this is your life now. One long pig bladder to the back of the head scenario. As you cross into the quieter part of town, the smells shift. Less sweat, more incense. A woman carries a tray of honey cakes toward a small altar at a crossroads. You pause just long enough to catch the scent sugar fig, maybe cinnamon, and sigh. It's not for eating, it's for the gods. You pass the shrine, bow your head briefly, and keep walking. The gods are always watching, or so you're told. Sometimes it feels like they're just making things interesting. Eventually, you find yourself near the city's edge. The noise fades, replaced by the rustle of olive trees and the distant bleating of goats. You sit on a rock, stretch your legs, and take a moment to breathe. Your tunic sticks in new places now. The sun has sunk slightly lower, but it's still hot enough to fry an egg on your shoulder. Not that you have eggs. You sigh. You lean back, staring up at the blue sky. It's easy to forget in the dust and stink of the city just how beautiful Greece can be. The olive trees shimmer. The air is thick with resin and sun-warmed earth. And for a brief second, you understand why poets wax rhapsodic about it. And then a fly lands directly in your eye. You swat it away, muttering curses in 3 dialects, and stand. No more lounging. There's still work to be done, perhaps a delivery to make, or a message to carry, or someone's uncle to avoid. Because life in ancient Greece isn't made up of great battles or grand speeches. It's a string of minor inconveniences baked into myth by the sheer force of endurance. And if you're lucky, you'll make it to dinner without stepping on another sea urchin's spine. You head back toward the center of the city, brushing olive leaves from your hair and squinting through the late afternoon light. Your stomach has quieted for now. Your sweat has dried into a salty crust along your arms, and your tunic, bless its stubborn spirit, has decided to cling just enough to preserve your dignity. For now. As you walk, the streets begin to buzz again, but this time with a different energy. This is the hour when the young men of Athens transition from physical to intellectual combat. From oiled limbs to sharpened minds. It's time for the afternoon discussions, rhetoric, geometry, ethics, politics, all offered free of charge and loaded with condescension. You reach a modest stone plaza where a circle of men has already formed. A bearded man in a simple himation basically a large blanket worn like a robe, is standing barefoot asking a group of bored teenagers, "What is justice?" You've stumbled into philosophy hour. You sit on a flat stone nearby, pretending to stretch your calves, while you eavesdrop. The man speaks slowly, carefully, like each word is carved from marble. It might even be Plato himself, or at least one of his copycat fans. It's hard to tell. Everyone with a beard and a scroll thinks they're Plato. The discussion quickly devolves into a debate about whether stealing bread to feed your family is ethical. One young man insists it is. Another shouts, "Only if it's barley bread. Wheat bread is for the elites." Everyone laughs except the speaker, who frowns like he's just been insulted in hexameter. This is the Agora's Other Functions philosophy arena. You're not safe from intellectual ambushes here. Even the olive vendor might challenge you to define areta virtue while handing you a handful of wrinkled fruit. And don't expect to win. You once tried to participate. You quoted something you thought was profound about courage. Turned out it was a line from a bawdy comedy play. They laughed for 10 minutes. You haven't spoken since. Today, you're just a listener. But it's exhausting in its own way. Keeping up with shifting arguments, remembering the right words for unjust tyranny, and nodding meaningfully even when you don't understand. This is mental gymnastics in a city where failing publicly is a spectator sport. Still, you can't help but admire the rhythm of it all. The way language dances the boldness of questions asked without answers, the sheer gall it takes to declare the universe unknowable and then lecture for 3 hours about it. Historians still argue whether this philosophical tradition was accessible to the average citizen or just a pastime for the bored and literate elite. Truth is, most Athenians had a front row seat to these dialogues, whether they asked for one or not. You stretch your legs as the speaker pivots toward metaphysics, and your mind begins to wander. To the side, a group of women passes by carrying woven baskets of herbs. They keep their eyes low and their steps quick. Philosophy isn't for them, not officially. They don't get a place in these debates or at the assembly or on the juries unless they're Spartan. Then all bets are off. But here in Athens, the city that birthed democracy, you only get a voice if you're male adult and a citizen. Everyone else watches from the sidelines, wives, daughters, slaves, medics, foreigners. You can live your whole life here and never cast a vote. Still, the women know things. They discuss everything behind closed doors, who's sleeping with whom, which neighbor's statue looks suspiciously like someone else's husband, which gods to avoid this week. Their network is as thick as any scroll, just quieter. You rise from your stone perch and stretch again. Your joints crack like dry twigs. Philosophy may feed the soul, but it does nothing for your aching back. You continue toward the store, the covered walkway where the real intellectuals gather. Here under the marble roof and tall columns, men pace slowly as they discuss the nature of the cosmos politics, and why goats are probably more logical than half the assembly members. You walk alongside them briefly, listening in. One man insists that fire is the origin of all things. Another says it's water. A third offers with the calm of someone who's never done laundry that it must be air. They argue like their lives depend on it. You wonder if any of them have ever actually started a fire. A beggar leans against the last pillar of the stoa, muttering to himself. Some think he's mad. Others claim he's a misunderstood genius. You toss him a fig pit. He throws it back. You move on. Now you're tired. Your mind has been battered by half-truths, bold guesses, and at least one confusing reference to turtle metaphors. You're hungry again, or maybe just thirsty. Either way, your stomach has issued a formal complaint. But just before you step away, something tugs at your thoughts. One of the philosophers, lean, wild-eyed, with sandals so worn they're more suggestion than shoe, leans close to a small crowd and says, "To know that you know nothing is the beginning of wisdom." You pause. That one hits. Probably because after everything you've heard today, you feel like you know even less than when you woke up. You smile. Just a little. Then you turn and head home, or somewhere near it. Because in ancient Greece, even a simple stroll through town means you're wrestling with the universe before dinner. As you leave the stoa behind, your brain still fogged with paradoxes and proverbs, you nearly run into a group of men pacing toward the Pnyx, the rocky hill where democratic decisions are made and voices rise louder than the cicadas. You weren't planning on going, but when half the city starts moving in one direction, curiosity becomes a civic duty. And besides, it's ostracism season. Yes, that's right. Time to vote someone off the island, or rather, out of the city. You climb the path slowly, legs aching from the gymnasium sandals, rubbing your heels raw again. Ahead, the crowd thickens, citizens only, of course. No women, no slaves, no medics. Just Athenian men gathering under the open sky to decide who's gotten a little too popular for their own good. It's not a trial. There's no defense, no argument, no appeal. Just a name, written on a broken piece of pottery in Ostrakhan. You scratch it in with a stick, press it into the voting pile, and hope no one notices you spelled it wrong. This is democracy Greek style. You find a spot on a rock and watch as men file past the urns, their faces serious, some smug. The tension is strange, equal parts sacred ritual and petty drama. Last year it was a general who spoke too often. Before that, a merchant who built his house a little too high. No crime required, just vibes. If 6,000 votes say you're out, you're out. 10 years. Pack your things. You lean toward the man next to you and whisper, "Who's the favorite this year?" He shrugs. Maybe Hyperbolos. Talks too much. Maybe Themistocles. Too clever. Or maybe it'll be no one. Can that happen? Oh, sure. Sometimes we just write nobody and go drink. Athenians believed this process protected democracy. Too much power in one man's hand ostracize him. Get too rich, too famous, too beloved. Hope you like long walks on foreign beaches. Historians still argue whether ostracism was political justice or just a popularity contest with sharp consequences. One thing's for sure, it kept everyone humble. You think back to that philosopher who spoke earlier, the one who said wisdom begins with knowing you know nothing. He probably got exiled once or twice, maybe for saying just that. As the voting continues, a slave collects ostraka and dumps them into a giant pile. You see names, repeating, some carved angrily, others sloppily. Some just marked with a symbol, a fish, a bird, a crude drawing of a nose. Ancient graffiti passive-aggressively immortalized. The man next to you huffs. We'll see what the crowd thinks. Democracy right. You nod, but you know better than to cheer too loudly. Today, they vote out someone else. Tomorrow, it might be you. All it takes is a whisper, a rival, a bad joke in the wrong company. Suddenly, you're not a citizen. You're a memory. You descend the pinnacle slowly as the crowd disperses, muttering, speculating. The ostraka will be counted tonight. The exile announced tomorrow. People will feign surprise. Some will throw private celebrations. You pass by a boy carving names into clay shards. He offers one to you, 2 for 1. Want to write someone out of your life? You smile, decline, and walk on. You've got enough people trying to vote you out already. By the time you reach the lower streets again, the sun has begun to droop behind the rooftops. The golden light hits the city with an almost theatrical glow. Everything looks softer, more forgiving. You pause at a fountain cup your hands and drink. The water is tepid but clean. A few children are playing nearby, chasing each other with shrieks and sloshing buckets. You catch a glimpse of your reflection, dirt-smudged, sun-reddened, sweat-streaked, and grin. A proper Athenian. Your tunic as ever tries to betray you with a gust of wind. You hold it down with one hand and keep walking. The scent of roasting garlic wafts from a nearby stall. Someone's preparing a stew. Your stomach takes note. You might head there next. But for now, you're content just surviving. And surviving in Athens means being clever enough to avoid exile, strong enough to handle a spear, and wise enough to stay quiet when needed. You've seen the baths, the food, the philosophies, and now the vote that can send a person into oblivion. This city built democracy from dust, blood, and olive oil. But make no mistake, it's as fragile as a pot shard and just as sharp. So hold your tongue, hold your tunic, and watch your step. You never know when the next vote will include your name. Evening is sliding in smearing gold across the terracotta rooftops and turning the grime of the day into something almost poetic. The air cools just slightly enough to remind you that you're still sticky, still sore, and still wearing the same wool tunic that's clung to your body like a passive-aggressive octopus. You could go home, but you don't. Not yet. Instead, you turn toward the outskirts of the city, toward the place where the streets narrow, the homes shrink, and the voices change. You're heading into the quarters where the others live, the freedmen, the medics, the immigrants, the skilled laborers who help keep Athens running but never get invited to the assembly. You nod at a group of potters hunched over a kiln. Their hands are black with soot, their eyes half closed from the heat, but their movements are practiced fluid. Nearby, a woman carries a stack of woven mats on her back, the top layer catching the fading sun and glowing like gold thread. She doesn't look at you. She's not expected to. These are the not quite citizens, the half included, The ones who build clean serve and sell but can't vote, can't own land, and can't marry freely into citizen families. And that's just the freedmen. If you're born a slave in Athens, your life is dictated by the hands that own you. You fetch water, you grind grain, you pour wine, you raise other people's children. You might be a household servant, a construction laborer, a market runner. If you're lucky, you might be educated scribes, and accountants are often enslaved too. But freedom, that's a conditional promise, and even if granted, it comes with chains of its own. You stop at a simple altar near a fork in the road. Someone has left a crust of bread, a few olives, and a wilted sprig of rosemary, a quiet offering tucked beside a tiny figurine of Hermes, messenger, trickster, patron of travelers, thieves, and the halfway free. You drop a grape stem beside it, your own tribute, small but yours. Further ahead, you pass a group of freedmen sharing a bottle of sour wine and laughing too loudly. One raises it toward you in a mock toast. To liberty, he slurs, which means I can choose where not to eat tonight. You smile politely and move on. Historians still argue whether Athenian slavery was better or worse than in later empires. It had its peculiarities. Some slaves could own property, earn money, even buy their freedom. Others were worked to death in silver mines or sacrificed metaphorically to public convenience. The Greeks saw no contradiction between debating ethics and owning people. Even Aristotle, yes, that Aristotle wrote that some people were slaves by nature. You think about that as you pass a boy no older than 10 hauling a water jug nearly his own weight. He doesn't look at you. He doesn't have time to. You turn a corner and walk past a tall stone wall, one of the few buildings here with real protection. A banker's home, maybe a foreign merchant. You can hear music inside, soft lyre notes interrupted by laughter. Not cruel laughter, just distant. This too is Athens, the city of light and shadow, of marble and mud, of freedom and hierarchy so old it breathes through stone. You glance up. A swallow darts across the sky, black against the last burn of sun. You follow its arc until it disappears behind the rooftops. And just like that, you're reminded you're lucky to walk free at all. You wander toward the modest southern wall where the city begins to fade into fields and scrub brush. It's quieter here. The road thins. A fig tree leans out over the path, offering a few ripe fruits. You pick one, brush it against your tunic, and take a bite. Sweet, overripe, the kind of taste that sticks in your molars and your memory. In the distance, smoke curls upward from a small farmhouse. Maybe they're cooking lentils, maybe just burning weeds. Either way, it smells better than anything you've eaten today. You sit down on a flat rock, pulling your knees up to rest your arms. From here, Athens looks peaceful, compact, ancient, humming with energy you can't see from this angle. The Acropolis rises like a stone crown above it all, watching silently like a god that's already made up its mind. You sigh, your feet ache, your thoughts are scattered, but for now there's quiet, just a city of contradictions behind you, and a stretch of dusty road ahead. And somewhere in the middle of it all, you trying to hold your tunic shut with one hand and your future together with the other. The sun has nearly vanished now, leaving only streaks of amber across the clouds and long creeping shadows across the olive groves. The breeze has returned cooler, more forgiving, and for the first time all day it feels like a kindness. It tugs gently at your tunic, no longer trying to expose you, but offering a bit of mercy in the shape of wind. You rise from the stone where you've been sitting and begin the walk back toward the city. Your muscles complain. Your stomach is muttering. And your sandals, well, they've officially given up. The left one now flaps louder than the right. You're a one-man symphony of exhaustion. You round a bend near the Dipylon Gate, the main entrance to Athens, and pause. It's busy as always. Travelers arriving, others leaving, vendors still hawking late-day bread, and guards leaning lazily on their spears, pretending to look alert. But what catches your eye isn't the noise. It's the women. A small procession of them moving slowly toward a side altar. They carry baskets covered in cloth, their heads slightly bowed, their movements precise. Offerings. This is a thesmophoria, a quiet, mostly women-only ritual for Demeter and Persephone. You've only heard whispers of it, never seen it up close. Men aren't allowed to witness much, which of course only makes it more fascinating. You keep your distance, pretending to inspect a cracked amphora as they pass. There's a hush around them, reverence, mystery. The women whisper among themselves, and you catch a word or two, seed, return, grief. It hits you suddenly, and without warning, this civilization, for all its bravado and logic and endless talking, is also built on fear. Fear of hunger, fear of the gods, fear of change, and beneath all of it, a deeper, quieter fear that the balance could tip and never come back. Rituals like this are meant to keep the world spinning. You don't always understand them, but you feel them, especially at this hour when the light turns gold and the line between myth and memory blurs. Historians still argue whether the average Athenian truly believed in the gods or just respected the structure they offered. Maybe it doesn't matter. Faith in the ritual, if not the deity, was enough to bind the community together. You walk past the gate and into the city proper, now soft in the dusk. Lamps are being lit, tiny oil fires casting flickering halos onto mud brick walls. You smell smoked olives and the tang of fermented fish paste. Someone plays a slow melody on a flute nearby. It's out of tune. You don't mind. You pass a group of boys laughing as they smear ash on each other's faces, pretending to be satyrs. One wears a crown of crushed ivy and bleats like a goat. The others chase him, shrieking with joy. You almost laugh. Almost. Then someone bumps into you hard. You stumble, turn, and catch a glimpse of a man's back as he disappears into the crowd. No apology. Just gone. You check your pouch. Still there. He wasn't a thief. Maybe just a man with somewhere to be and no patience left. You keep walking. Ahead, you hear the unmistakable sound of a lyre and singing. Not a performance, just a couple of neighbors sharing a tune outside their home. The woman's voice is rough but warm. The man keeps losing the beat. It's perfect. You stop near a well and sit again, this time just to breathe. Around you, Athens hums. Not loudly, not proudly, just exists. In the creak of a cartwheel, in the hiss of oil as it hits a pan, in the rustle of reeds outside a shuttered window. The city lives in these small sounds, and you, despite everything, despite your sore feet, your traitorous tunic, your roasted skin, and bruised ego, you are still part of it. That's the trick of ancient Greece. It demands everything: sweat blood obedience, cleverness, silent speech, and then it offers, if you're lucky, a place in its noise. You rise slowly, your joints popping like old roof tiles. You've still got enough strength left to make it home. Whatever home means when your bed is straw, your roof leaks when it feels dramatic, and your neighbors argue loudly about whether Hercules or Theseus had better hair. You pass one final shrine on the way, a simple stone shelf with a tiny statue of Hestia, goddess of the hearth. There's a candle lit, its flame swaying in the wind, but refusing to go out. You pause, whisper a word you don't quite believe, and move on. Athens at night is another creature entirely, and you're not done with it yet. Night descends not with silence, but with a soft swell of sound laughter echoing down alleys. Footsteps tapping on stone, the occasional donkey braying indignantly in the dark. Athens doesn't sleep all at once. It drifts. It flickers. You wander through the residential lanes now, where shadows stretch long and the lamps cast dancing amber circles across the dusty ground. Your own shadow follows you like a second self, slightly hunched, dragging its feet just as tired as you. Home is a small two-room cube tucked between a carpenter's shop and a woman who owns too many geese. You hear them honking before you see your own doorway. Inside, it's dim. A cracked oil lamp glows weakly on the ledge, casting shadows that make the walls seem closer than they are. The space is hot even now. The heat lingers like a guest who won't leave. You duck inside, step around your younger brother's discarded sandals, and collapse onto the straw mat that serves as a communal bed. You hit a sharp piece of reed and curse softly. Your mother shooshes you from the corner where she's nursing a cooking fire back to life. Your father is bent over a small scroll pretending to read, but really just staring. Your sister snores softly, already curled up on a wool blanket, with one leg dangling off the side like she's daring the underworld to try something. No one speaks much at this hour. Words are expensive when you're exhausted. You strip off your tunic, finally free from its damp, itchy grip, and dab at your neck with a rag soaked in water that's been sitting in a cracked ceramic jug since morning. It's lukewarm, still better than sweat. Dinner is whatever's left. A few olives, a scoop of mashed lentils, and a smear of honey on a chunk of bread, so dense you briefly consider using it as a building material. You chew slowly, trying to savor it, trying not to notice that you're still hungry. As you eat, the fire crackles and spits. Smoke curls upward and escapes through the hole in the ceiling, taking the day's frustrations with it, or at least that's the hope. Someone outside sings a lullaby to a fussy child. The tune is familiar. You hum along quietly, not for any particular reason, but because it fills the space. And then comes the knock. 3 soft taps on the doorframe. You all freeze. It's late for visitors. Too late. Your father stands, stretches, and pulls the door curtain aside. Outside stands a man you don't know, wrapped in a rough cloak, sandals caked in dust. He whispers something. Your father nods. Then the stranger disappears into the darkness, his footsteps fading fast. Your father returns and sits, says nothing. You all pretend that's normal. The truth is, messages come at odd hours in this city. Political news, family updates, temple warnings, gossip disguised as prophecy, and occasionally a reminder that you live in a city built on reputation and suspicion. Someone always knows someone who said too much. You lie back and stare at the ceiling. You trace the cracks in the clay plaster with your eyes the way you've done since you were small. You know every twist and hairline fracture. Each one looks a little like a constellation. Athens has stars too, of course, but they're harder to see from here. Too much smoke, too many lamps. The gods are still up there, you're told, but they prefer the mountains or the sea, anywhere with a better view. You roll onto your side and catch a glimpse of your brother drooling onto the mat. Your mother has finally laid down. Your father snores like a man who once fought a boar and lost. The fire has dimmed to a warm red pulse, and you lie there half-fed, fully worn out, mentally cluttered with everything you saw today. Figs ostraca, dusty sandals shouting, philosophers, satyr-faced boys, oil baths, bad bread, good olives, injustice in the shape of democracy, and a city that won't stop talking long enough to catch its breath. You're not sleeping yet, but you're close. Outside, the geese honk once, then go quiet. And for a moment, the city does too. Morning doesn't arrive gently. It crashes in loud and uncaring. Somewhere nearby, a pot clatters. A goat bleats with the rage of 1,000 sleepless nights. And a child yells something about figs being missing again. You open your eyes to the warm orange light of dawn leaking through a half-cracked shutter. Your neck hurts. Your legs are stiff. You have straw in your hair and possibly a bug trying to colonize your armpit. Welcome back to ancient Greece. You sit up slowly, trying not to jostle your sister who mumbles in her sleep and clutches a sandal like it's a security blanket. Your brother is already gone, probably off delivering a message or pretending to work for someone important. Your father snores on face down, a man at peace, with absolutely nothing. Outside, the city is waking up again. Not in a hopeful bird-singing sort of way, more like a grumpy bear shaking dust from its fur and immediately stubbing its toe. You throw on your tunic. It's still damp from yesterday's sweat. It smells like salt wood smoke and faint regret. You tie it anyway. There's no laundry service in this century, unless you count the river, and even then you better like your clothes rough and slightly fishy. You step outside blinking against the light and head toward the fountain. Your sandals slap the stones like bored fish. A woman passes by carrying a basket of herbs. She nods at you. You nod back, both of you pretending you're not mentally cataloging each other's stink level. At the fountain, a few others are already lined up. One man rinses a cut on his hand, muttering about rusty nails and bad omens. Another scrubs a cooking pot, while loudly listing the reasons his neighbor is a traitor to democracy. He's only mildly drunk. You splash your face, The water is cold, and it snaps you awake. A few feet away, a child slips and lands on his backside. No one reacts. This happens daily. You cup your hands and drink just a little, enough to wet your mouth and hope it's not from a pipe that's also connected to an open sewer. Hydration, like most things here, comes with risks. Back home, your mother is kneading dough with the kind of focus usually reserved for military strategy. The bread won't be ready for hours, but she works as if time has a personal grudge against her. Your sister hums to herself while cleaning out a cracked jug. She's wearing yesterday's tunic, too. You eat a breakfast of yesterday's bread, soaked in today's wine, and try to chew like someone who hasn't lost hope. Today your task is medicine-related. A neighbor's uncle has a fever. Not the deadly kind, hopefully, but a long, sticky sort of fever that's left him talking to shadows and sweating through 3 tunics. You've been asked to fetch the healer, or at least one of them. There are 2 kinds in Athens. The first is the iatros, a formal physician, usually a man with scrolls, oils, and a beard that screams, "I read Aristotle before breakfast." The second is the more improvisational kind. Old women with herbal bundles, suspicious charms, and a working knowledge of garlic's many uses. You're going to see the second kind. She's closer and cheaper. You weave through the streets, dodging carts and loose chickens, until you find her house near the edge of the cemetery district. Her door is open, always is. Inside it smells like thyme vinegar and faint mildew. She is crouched over a mortar, grinding something that might be willow bark or rat tail. You don't ask. "He's sweating," she says without looking up. You nod, talking nonsense about olives and Apollo. She grunts. Could be heat, could be spirits, could be his wife put vinegar in his wine again. "Take this." She hands you a pouch. Inside is a mixture of crushed herbs, dried berries, and what you think might be snakeskin. You blink. Steep it in warm water, not boiling. Smear some on his chest. Make a little offering to Asclepius just in case. And don't let him eat onions tonight. Or beans. Beans. Do you want him to get better or explode fair? You leave quickly, resisting the urge to smell the pouch again. Historians still argue whether ancient Greek medicine was truly advanced or just very confident guesswork wrapped in poetry. Some treatments work. Willow bark, for example, actually contains a precursor to aspirin. Others, not so much, like using boiled cabbage water to balance your humors, or rubbing wine on a wound and yelling at it. But even bad medicine is better than none. And the Greeks, for all their philosophical detours, cared about healing. They had temples devoted to it, whole cults built around rest, diet, dreams, and baths. They believed the body needed harmony, not just treatment. You drop the herbs off with the neighbor's family, repeat the instructions, and bow out before they ask you to stay and help. As you walk back through the city, you pass another healer, and Iatros this time, lecturing a group of young men about phlegm, blood, black bile, and yellow bile. He uses colored clay to demonstrate, and honestly, you kind of get it. You still don't want to drink cabbage water. You stop at a stall and buy a handful of garlic cloves, not for cooking, for warding off illness, or spirits, or nosy philosophers. It works equally well on all three. And then with your pouch lighter and your head buzzing with herb fumes, you return home. Your father is awake now, chewing olives and complaining about taxes. Your mother is yelling at a goat. You sit down, eat another chunk of chewy bread, and close your eyes for just a second. It's barely noon, and you've already fought disease, philosophy, and garlic. You open your eyes again when someone nudges your knee with a toe. It's your sister, holding a cracked cup of watered wine and a look that says, "You fell asleep sitting upright again, didn't you?" You nod and take the drink. The wine is tepid and vaguely sour. You grimace and sip anyway. It's early afternoon now, the part of the day when the city either naps or complains about not being able to. Your neighbors are quieter. The streets shimmer in the heat, and even the flies seem too tired to buzz with any enthusiasm. But you're not off the hook yet. You've been summoned to assist at a workshop ceramics specifically. A neighbor's cousin's cousin needs help carrying amphorae to the market. Your arms ache in anticipation. So you trudge through the alley's sandals, scraping tunic, clinging garlic cloves, clinking in your pouch like socially anxious dice. By the time you reach the potter's yard, it's already a chorus of banging, scraping, and shouting about cracks. The kiln is glowing red. A thick man with ash-streaked forearms points to a pile of amphorae and grunts. Lift that one gently. You don't know why they always say gently. These pots weigh as much as a small sheep and are just as stubborn. You hoist the first amphora, arms trembling slightly. It's freshly fired, still warm. You move slowly, carefully, ignoring the sweat running down your back like someone dribbled a water skin down your spine. This is not glamorous work. It's not philosophical. No one writes poems about the guy who carried the jars. But these jars hold wine grain oil currency in a world before coins were widely trusted. Amphorae are your inboxes, your shipping crates, your pantry, and your paper trail. You lug 3 jars down to the market, navigating narrow alleys, stepping over puddles of things best unexamined, and dodging a pack of children trying to play javelin with a broomstick. One nearly takes out your knee. At the market, the potter's cousin haggles with a wine seller who insists he can get a better deal from Corinth. You pretend not to eavesdrop. You are definitely eavesdropping. The seller points out a small chip on one jar. The potter insists it adds character. You stand there holding the heavy vessel like a statue that didn't ask to be included in this drama. Eventually, a deal is made. You're handed 2 figs and a slice of hard cheese as thanks. Payment in this city is often more about favors than drachmas. You eat the figs immediately. The cheese you save for morale. You head back through the agora again this time, pausing at a stall selling small trinkets, bone combs, bronze brooches, crude carvings of gods. You consider a tiny figure of Athena, but your coin pouch says, pick up a rock and squint instead. So you move on. On the edge of the square, a man is shouting about the latest war tax. He's standing on an overturned crate waving a scroll. Around him, others shout back, some in agreement, others just enjoying the yelling. It's a good show. You linger. He rails against corruption, bad harvests, Sparta, and just for variety, the local fish inspector. The eels are rigged, he declares. Everyone cheers. Eels are always suspicious. Historians still argue whether this kind of open political speech made Athens freer or just louder. The truth is, it did both. You could voice your opinions here as long as you weren't a woman, a slave, a medic, or just too clever for your own good. There were lines, wobbly ones. You head toward a quieter corner of the city where the tanners work. The smell hits you first, pungent, sour, and unmistakable. This is where animal skins become sandal shields and the world's saddest curtains. You're not here for the leather. You're just passing through, but even that feels like a test of endurance. You wrap a cloth around your nose and quicken your step, gagging slightly. A dog watches you pass, judging you for your weak stomach. You don't blame it. Eventually, you escape the stink and find yourself near the edge of the theater district. The great stone structure looms to the south, the Theater of Dionysus. Empty for now, but you can still feel the echoes of yesterday's performances. You stop and rest on a step, biting into your chunk of cheese. It tastes like regret and goat. Still you chew slowly and look up at the stone rows, imagining the crowd, the chorus, the masked actors. In this very spot, thousands of Athenians sat laughing at lewd jokes or weeping over tragedies involving gods, hubris, and really poor life choices. It was more than entertainment. It was civic duty, emotional maintenance, and occasionally a chance to throw olives at bad performers. You lean back, let the sun warm your face, and think about how strange it is that your city cares so deeply about art and so little about personal hygiene. Even here at the center of culture and intellect, you're still itchy from that fig delivery. You scratch discreetly and eat the last of the cheese. There's still time before supper. You could help your mother with lentils, or more likely, be sent to collect firewood because someone broke the last branch in half during a spirited goat chase. You stand again, stretch your back, and exhale. Another day is winding down. You've hauled clay jars, dodged javelin kids, gagged in the Tanner district, and somehow ended up at a world-famous theater with cheese crumbs in your lap. You're not a hero, but you're surviving. And in ancient Greece, that's already a myth-worthy feat. The sun hangs lower now, its golden rays catching the dust in the air and turning the city into a hazy watercolor of sandstone and shadow. You start the slow trek back home, passing under low-hanging laundry and slipping around corners worn smooth by 1,000 bare feet before yours. You're nearly to your street when a familiar sound hits your ears, a chorus of women's voices rising and falling like a tide. Curious, you follow the sound around a back alley and toward the neighborhood hearth shrine. There, a group of women is gathered offering songs to Hestia, goddess of the home. They're laying wreaths of dried myrtle and pouring wine onto the dusty altar stone. You stay well back. This space isn't for you. Not as a man, not at this hour. Still, you pause and watch. The women's movements are deliberate, careful. One places a folded cloth by the flame. Another sprinkles salt over embers. The singing quiets into whispers, and the smoke curls skyward thick and slow. You don't know the full meaning of what they're doing. You just know that it matters. That somehow this act, small domestic overlooked, is what holds the chaos of the city together. You turn away quietly and head home. Back at your house, the evening meal is being assembled in stages. Someone's boiling lentils in a blackened pot. Your mother is chopping onions like they insulted her. Your father is poking the fire and grumbling about how everything tasted better under Pericles, even though he was a teenager at the time and probably didn't have all his teeth yet. Your sister is trying to coax a half-feral cat away from the bread bowl. She hisses. The cat hisses back. You're not sure who won, but you step in to prevent bloodshed. You sit and eat warm lentils, hard bread, a handful of olives. The meal is quiet, broken only by slurps and the occasional complaint. No one thanks anyone. There are no toasts. It just is. A moment shared, a moment survived. Afterward, you help clean. Sort of. You move bowls from one place to another, then pretend to look for a lost fig in the corner so you don't get asked to sweep. Once the fire is banked and the cat has been bribed with scraps, your father tells a story. He always tells a story. Tonight, it's about the time he swears he saw Hermes himself near the crossroads disguised as a beggar, testing mortals. Your mother rolls her eyes. Your sister mouths along with the words, having heard it 100 times. But you listen anyway, because it's tradition, because it's safe, because some part of you likes the idea that the gods still walk among you, watching, judging occasionally, stealing your sandals just to see if you'll notice. Historians still argue whether the ancient Greeks truly believed the gods lived among them, or if these stories were simply tools, myth, as metaphor, as moral instruction, as a cultural glue. But sitting here, legs tucked beneath you on a straw mat that smells vaguely of goat, it doesn't feel like metaphor. It feels like memory, like ritual, like connection to something older and wider than the city walls. After the story, the fire dims further. Your mother hums while braiding her hair. Your sister sketches something in the soot near the hearth, probably a crude drawing of a goat with philosophical ambitions. You stretch out on the mat and sigh. It's been another day of small aches and large truths, of amphorae and garlic of sweat, and theater of rituals you're not invited to but still depend on. You remember the ostraka, the broken bits of pottery that could send a man into exile. You wonder who the city chose this time. You wonder what it feels like to pack your life into a bag and walk out through the gates not knowing if you'll ever return. You wonder if you'd miss this place, the bad bread, the worse sandals, the endless debates about whether fish sauce counts as soup. Probably, because for all its flaws, its sweat and stink and constant threat of public humiliation, Athens is something. It's not beautiful, not in the clean modern sense, but it's alive. As you drift toward sleep, the last thing you hear is the cat snoring loud, offended, possibly dreaming of conquering Sparta. You smile, because for one more day, you've made it. The next morning comes with no fanfare, just the dull ache in your back and the warm breath of the cat pressed directly against your nose. You blink once, then twice, and push it gently away. It yowls like you've insulted its ancestors, then stalks off with full dramatic flair. Your family is already stirring. The mat creaks under shifting weight, and someone steps on your foot in the rush to get to the jug of water. You hiss, they apologize with a grunt, and the day begins. Today's task: you've drawn the short straw or possibly offended a minor god and have been asked to help clear out the community latrine pits. Yeah, that's right. Welcome to the glamorous world of ancient sanitation. As you shuffle into your sandals, which are now more string than leather, you try to mentally prepare. You've faced war drills, theater hecklers, and lentil stew 3 days in a row. Surely this can't be worse. It is. The latrine pits located just outside the main residential area are not the carefully tiled marvels of Roman aqueduct fame. No, these are shallow, narrow trenches lined with stones and barely maintained. There's a wooden plank. There's a faint whiff of every bad decision made by anyone in the neighborhood. And there's a swarm of flies that seem suspiciously intelligent. You and 2 others have been tasked with cleaning them, turning the soil, as your supervisor politely puts it. You consider faking a sudden philosophical crisis and walking into the hills, but instead you pick up a crude shovel and get to work. It's hot. It's horrible. And the jokes start almost immediately. This is the true democracy, one man mutters. Equals stink for all. Do you think Plato ever did this? Another asks. Only if he lost a bet? You gag. They laugh. Historians still argue whether Athens had effective waste management or if it simply relied on dry weather and divine indifference. What's clear is that much of the city's sanitation depended on manual labor and sheer denial. Chamber pots were emptied into alleys. Latrines like these were few and far between. Disease unsurprisingly followed the path of least resistance. You work for hours, shoveling, sweating, trying not to breathe through your nose. At one point, someone jokes that the Oracle of Delphi wouldn't need hallucinogenic fumes if she stood here for 5 minutes. You consider laughing, but it's hard when your dignity is actively dissolving in front of you. Eventually, the shift ends. You're handed a piece of cloth soaked in wine to wipe your hands with. You prefer fire, but this will do. You slink away from the pits like a defeated general, muttering apologies to your nose and swearing you'll never eat lentils again. You won't keep that promise. At home, your mother won't let you inside until you scrub yourself with vinegar and dried rosemary. You do. Twice. Even the cat refuses to sit near you afterward. Once inside, you collapse into a corner, reeking of sacrifice and slightly more humble than you were this morning. But there's no rest, because this is Athens, and there's always something next. You're called to the courtyard of a wealthier neighbor. They need a runner. A message must be taken to the Acropolis. It's urgent, they say, sacred even. And they hand you a scroll tied with twine and sealed with a faint smudge of wax shaped like an owl. You don't ask questions. You just run. The road to the Acropolis is steep. Your legs burn. Your lungs sting. You pass merchants' goats and a man loudly trying to convert a stranger to a new cult that worships bread. Finally, you reach the base of the marble steps. and begin the climb. The sun glints off the stone, nearly blinding. Tourists from across the Greek world, Corinth, Delos, maybe even Rhodes, murmur as they ascend beside you, their sandals suspiciously new-looking. You arrive breathless at the top. The Parthenon towers before you, massive and gleaming, a temple to Athena that makes every house you ever lived in feel like a badly built outhouse. You deliver the scroll to a temple attendant who nods and disappears into the shade. That's it. Task complete. No reward. No thanks. Just the satisfaction of having played your small part in the city's sacred machinery. You sit for a moment on a low stone wall, catching your breath and taking in the view. Athens sprawls below, chaotic, smoky loud. But from here it looks organized, grand, almost mythic. You can see the agora, the red rooftops, the winding streets like veins in the city's body. You spot your own district. You think about your parents, your sister the geese 2 doors down, and the amphora you tripped over 3 days ago. It all looks so much smaller from up here. And then, as if on cue, your stomach growls. You head back down. You grab a snack from a roadside stall, a stuffed fig, warm and sticky. It costs almost everything you have, but it's worth it. You eat it in 4 bites, licking the syrup from your fingers like someone who remembers what joy tastes like. You make it home just before sunset. Your mother looks you over, sniffing, and nods approvingly. She's cleaned the corner mat. Your sister has drawn another goat in the soot. This one appears to be giving a lecture. You lie back and exhale. You cleaned a latrine. You delivered a sacred message. You ran across the city. And now, finally, you get to rest. Until tomorrow, of course. Because tomorrow might bring a funeral, a wedding, a plague, or another fig run. But for now, you've survived the worst part of the day. And that's something. Dusk in Athens drapes the city in a soft glow like a curtain pulled gently over the chaos. Fires are being lit again, tiny orange sparks behind clay shutters and open hearths. The smell of smoke mixes with roasted onions, damp stone, and the ever-present tang of humanity. Your tunic clings again, damp with the day's labor and flavored with vinegar from that not quite bath earlier. You try not to think about the latrine shift, but your nose refuses to forget. Still, the evening brings a strange relief. The city slows down. Even the dogs bark less. People linger in doorways, share the latest market gossip, or argue quietly about whether tomorrow's festival will bring rain or scandal, or both. Probably both. You sit on a low stool outside your home, sipping watered wine from a clay cup with a chip in the rim. The stars haven't appeared yet, but the sky is turning that deep purplish blue that always feels a little divine. You wonder if one of the gods painted it tonight. Across the street, 2 old men are deep in conversation about socks, or rather, the absence of them. One insists that Sparta had wool foot wraps. The other says that's just a myth invented by lazy hoplites trying to avoid blisters. You sip your wine and decide they're both wrong, but also that it doesn't matter, because the real entertainment tonight is coming from further down the street. Someone set up a puppet show, a small wooden frame strung with worn cloth. 2 boys in tunics too short for decency manipulating carved wooden figures that dance, shout, and at one point fall dramatically off stage to riotous laughter. The crowd is small, mostly children, a few curious elders, and one goat with excellent taste in comedy. You wander over and stand behind the cluster. The play is simple, a retelling of the tale of Odysseus, except here he's a bumbling fool who forgets his own name, picks fights with goats, and tries to marry a cyclops by accident. You laugh. Everyone does, because sometimes myth needs to be mocked, especially when reality is already heavy. One of the puppets breaks mid-joke. The crowd gasps. The puppeteer improvises "Even gods have bad days" and waves the broken limb like it's part of the script. Cheers erupt. A clever recovery. Historians still argue whether humor was truly democratic in Athens or if most of it reinforced existing class lines. But puppet shows like these, they're different. They're bottom-up. No tickets, no masks. Just a wooden doll shouting nonsense in the dark and everyone pretending for a few moments that everything is okay. You toss a fig pit to the donations bowl and step away before they ask you to perform. Further along, a group of men sits cross-legged in a circle gambling with bones and small stones carved with symbols. One waves you over. You shake your head. You've got 3 obels to your name and a long-standing grudge against chance. Besides tonight, you're not looking for excitement. You're just walking, letting your feet find their own rhythm in the dim streets of a city that feels ancient and alive at the same time. You pass a bakery closed now, but the scent of charred crust still hangs in the air. A few crumbs scatter on the doorstep. A rat peeks out, considers you, then scurries off. You salute it for its courage. Eventually, your walk brings you to the outer edge of the city, the walls where guards stand in loose formation, watching shadows move in the field. You sit for a moment on the low ledge near the gate. The guards nod at you, too tired to care who you are, too used to the city's citizens wandering out here for peace. You look up. The stars are here now. Scattered pinpricks, tiny flames in the sky. Someone nearby is whispering the constellations Orion, Cassiopeia, Pegasus. You know the stories. You've heard them since you were small. Gods placed in the sky, trapped in eternal dramas, while mortals deal with goat theft and clogged sewers. You stretch your legs and watch the stars flicker. Athens may be a city of politics, theater, and philosophy, but it's also a city of wanderers like you. People who end their days not with speeches, but with stargazing. Quiet, simple, human. You stand again, bones creaking, and begin the walk home. Your sandals slap softly against the stones. Somewhere behind you, a flute starts up, badly played, but earnest. Someone practicing, someone hoping to be heard. You arrive back just as your mother is blowing on the fire to keep the embers alive. She glances at you, says nothing, and hands you a bowl of something lukewarm. You eat it without asking what it is. Your father's already asleep. Your sister's curled around the cat, which has forgiven you for your morning betrayal. You lie down on the mat. This time, you find a spot without straw jabbing you in the ribs. You close your eyes. And though your day involved excrement, broken puppets, and overheard arguments about Spartan footwear, you feel strangely content. You've survived another Athenian day. You're not famous, you're not wise, but you're here. And in this city of crumbling gods and immortal jokes, that's enough. Morning again. Your bones announce it before the sunlight does. You roll over on the mat, hear your shoulder crack like old pottery, and accept your fate. Another day in the miracle/mess that is Athens. You sit up, rub your face, and glance at the hearth. Your mother is already grinding grain, rhythmically pounding the pestle like it personally wronged her. Your father is putting on his sandals like he's preparing for battle. Your sister's gone, probably to fetch water or eavesdrop on market arguments again. You stand, stretch, and feel your spine click into place. Then, with a groan that could wake the underworld, you head outside into the brightness of another Athenian morning. Today, your name is on a list. Not a bad list, not yet. It's a city duty assignment. Every citizen has to pitch in now and then, cleaning, guarding, carrying messages, or helping with public festivals. You're hoping for something mild, maybe flower arranging. Instead, you've been assigned to the city watch. Not quite the military, not quite the police. More like, well, let's call it civilian quality control. You'll be patrolling with a short stick, a borrowed cloak, and a vague sense of responsibility. You show up at the meeting point near the agora. The man in charge is a veteran who looks like he could strangle a goat with one hand and still hold a debate with the other. He squints at your feet, those your best sandals. You look down. One is held together with twine and sheer willpower. Yes, he nods. Good enough. You walk the upper streets. Don't lose the stick. And just like that, you're part of Athens' least glamorous task force. Your shift begins with walking, a lot of walking, up the slopes near the Areopagus, past the temple steps, down alleys so narrow you have to turn sideways. Your job isn't to fight crime, it's to observe civic order, which mostly means breaking up dice games, stopping drunks from urinating on the statues, and occasionally telling someone, hey, maybe don't sacrifice that chicken here. You find yourself stepping between a woman and a merchant arguing over spoiled olives. You nod, thoughtfully point to the offending fruit, and suggest smells like Poseidon cursed them. The woman snorts. The merchant glares. But the argument dissolves. A win. Next you pass a small crowd gathered around a man yelling about injustice. Classic Athens. You pause to listen. He's ranting about jury selection, claiming the process favors people who own more than one tunic. You nod. So do others. Even the man he's yelling at. You break up a dice game that's spilled into the street, but not before you're invited to play. You're tempted, very tempted, but you remember your stick, your sandals, and your dignity, and walk on. As you circle back through the agora, a flute player tries to serenade a vendor selling onions. It doesn't go well. You watch as she throws a garlic braid at his head. He ducks. The garlic hits you instead. You're now wearing garlic. Again, historians still argue whether Athenian public life was organized or just beautifully chaotic. If today is any proof, the answer is both. Laws exist, yes, but so does constant improvisation. You're expected to know the rules, follow them, bend them when necessary, and look confident while doing it. By midday, you're hot, tired, and your stick has developed a suspicious crack halfway down the shaft. You sit near a column, sipping watered wine from a communal cup left by a kindly vendor. A group of boys run by, shrieking with laughter and swinging reeds at each other like swords. You smile. Then you spot an old man trying to climb a cart. He clearly has no business climbing. You rush over, help him down, and get a handful of curses and a fig in return. Fair trade. You return your stick at the end of your shift and receive your payment, one obol and a pat on the back. The pat feels more rewarding. You wander home, slowly passing a crowd near the store where someone is reading poetry aloud. You stop for a moment, listen to a few lines about the moon and unrequited love, and feel your shoulders soften. Poetry doesn't pay, but it does soothe. At home, your sister is grinding more grain. Your mother is stirring something thick and suspicious in a clay pot. Your father is asleep under the table, snoring like he's in charge of thunder tonight. Dinner is early today, stew and bread with a side of boiled greens. You eat quickly, then step back outside while there's still light in the sky. The neighborhood kids are playing a game with hoops and sticks. You join in for a minute laughing when you miss a catch and get hit in the shoulder. Your laughter surprises even you. Later, when the sky dims and the city exhales its heat, you sit quietly by the hearth. It wasn't a spectacular day. You weren't heroic. You weren't wise. But you upheld order, avoided embarrassment, helped an old man off a cart, and didn't get arrested for impersonating a law official with a cracked stick. In Athens, that's a resume. And as the fire flickers your limbs heavy and your eyes beginning to close, you think maybe tomorrow will be worse. But maybe it won't. Your eyes flutter open to darkness, deep early morning stillness, where the city hasn't quite begun to stir. You listen for a moment. No goats, no sandals scraping stone, no shouting over olives yet. Just your own breath slow and even, and the soft rhythmic wheeze of your father snoring from beneath a thin wool blanket. It's still early, but you're already awake. Something about today feels different. You slip outside quietly, the door creaking like a guilty thief. The air is cooler than usual, touched by the sea, and carrying the faintest scent of salt and laurel smoke. You stretch arms reaching toward stars that are fading in the pale pre-dawn light. Today is a holy day. Not just any festival, a major one. The Panathenaia, a celebration of Athena, patron goddess of the city, protector of civilization, and according to some, the only deity who can keep the men of Athens from arguing for 5 straight minutes. Today is ceremony, spectacle, and civic pride, all wrapped in one fragrant olive oil-soaked package. You head toward the main road where preparations are already underway. Torches flicker along the processional route. Women in flowing white robes carry garlands of flowers, their bare feet whispering over the stones. Young boys, dressed awkwardly in miniature versions of military gear, shuffle nervously in formation. You catch the scent of burning incense, sharp herbal holy. Somewhere up the hill, a priest is already chanting. The city is transforming fast. Stalls are draped with banners. Musicians tune their lyres and flutes. A chorus rehearses badly while a director gestures frantically and mutters about how even Dionysus would weep if he heard this mess. And the robe. That's the centerpiece of the whole thing, a giant hand-woven peplos embroidered with scenes of Athena's triumph over the giants, carried like a sail on a massive wooden frame through the streets. It will be paraded through the city and presented at her temple atop the Acropolis. You've seen it before, of course, but every year it still strikes you how something stitched by dozens of hands can become a single symbol that unites a city of wildly different people. You're not in the parade. You're not special enough or connected enough or beautiful enough to be picked as a bearer or singer or flutist. But you're here, part of the crowd, watching, nodding, breathing, in the reverence. A man next to you grumbles, "I miss the old Panathenaia. Less show, more wine." You nod like you agree, even though you don't know what the old one was like. You were probably still throwing rocks at crabs by the river when he was attending those better festivals. Still, the complaints are part of the tradition, too. Nothing is ever as sacred as the version someone remembers. Historians still argue whether the Panathenaia was primarily a religious rite, a political performance, or an excuse to flex cultural muscle. But on the ground where you're standing, feels like all three. There's faith, there's pageantry, and there's the strong smell of roasted goat somewhere nearby. You follow the procession slowly winding through streets that now look cleaner, brighter, if only for the day. Children wave olive branches. Old women throw barley from rooftops. Priests murmur blessings. Every few blocks, someone recites lines of Homer in a voice cracked by age and wine. You lose track of time. Eventually, the crowd gathers near the base of the Acropolis. The robe is lifted, careful hands guiding it into the temple, draping it across the statue of Athena. As the crowd falls into hushed silence, a chorus of girls begins to sing a hymn to the goddess. The notes rise clear and haunting. You feel the hair on your arms lift. For a moment, even the wind seems to pause. It's beautiful. And then someone sneezes loudly behind you, and the moment fractures like dropped pottery. People chuckle. Life returns. You turn and start walking back toward the agora. The official ceremony may be ending, but the unofficial festival is just beginning. You pass a man reciting riddles for coins. Another juggles fig-filled pastries and drops one into the lap of a delighted child. A woman offers honey cakes shaped like owls, and though you only have a single obol left, you buy one anyway. You bite into it and nearly cry. Sweet, sticky, warm, a tribute to both Athena and your exhausted spirit. As the day stretches, you wander through games and performances. You watch a race between two half-drunk men carrying amphorae. You listen to a bard retell the myth of Athena's birth, adding entirely new details involving lightning goats and what may have been a joke about socks. You cheer, you laugh, you forget for a little while the latrines, the sandals, the endless errands. This is the other side of Athens, not just sweat and debate, but celebration. The city's way of reminding itself that for all its flaws, for all its sharp edges, it can still be joyful. It can still gather under one sky and pretend, if only for a day, that it is something greater than noise and brick and arguments. You return home in the golden light of afternoon, your hands sticky with honey, your throat hoarse from cheering, your feet aching, but not from burden, from being. Your family is already inside. Your mother smells of roasted lamb. Your sister is braiding flowers into her hair. Your father is sitting with eyes closed, whispering prayers to Athena, quiet ones, real ones. You sit beside him, and for the first time in what feels like forever, you don't feel tired. You feel part of something, a thread in a robe, a word in a hymn, a face in a crowd that looked up and saw the gods, even if only for a moment. Evening comes slower after a festival. The city doesn't settle so much as it sighs content, overfed, and mildly tipsy. You step outside your home, once more drawn by the distant sound of flutes and the way the air still tastes faintly of roasted lamb and baked honey. The streets are scattered with flower petals, half-squashed pastries, and the occasional sandal abandoned in a moment of dance or dizziness. Children run wild faces, sticky, chasing one another with ribbons and shrieks. Even the dogs look smug bellies, swollen with dropped food and stolen scraps. You walk without purpose, no errands, no deliveries, no neighbor's cousin's goat to retrieve. Just your own footsteps tapping softly on the stone as the shadows lengthen. Ahead, at the small square near the artisan quarter, a group has gathered. Not for ceremony now, but for something looser music, impromptu poetry, the kind of celebration that happens when no one's in charge anymore. A young woman plays the lyre. Her fingers are light, her voice even lighter, the melody threading through the cooling air like mist. You find a seat on a nearby stone, one still warm from the day's sun. Someone hands you a fig soaked in wine. You eat it without asking why. The mood here is different than this morning's solemn processions. There's laughter now, gentle teasing, the kind of relaxed joy that only comes after something big like the city has exhaled, and so have you. A man stands up swaying only a little and begins to recite a poem. It starts reverent, a tribute to Athena's wisdom, and then veers off into something about stolen sandals, overly assertive goats, and the dangers of marrying a woman who can throw a javelin better than you. The crowd howls with laughter. You do too. You lean back, gaze upward. The stars are brighter now than they've been in weeks. No clouds, just a deep velvet sky and the flicker of eternity staring back. You think about the gods, not the polished versions in the temples, but the ones you live beside daily, the ones who inhabit burned bread and lucky dice throws, and the way the fig vendor always knows you're short one coin, but sells to you anyway. Historians still argue whether Greek religion was truly about belief or simply about participation, whether the people believed in the gods or just agreed to behave as if they did. But sitting here under starlight and laughter, you understand the truth. In Athens, worship wasn't just prayer, it was presence. You stand as the music shifts again, something slower now, and people begin to dance. Not with form, not with grace, just arms raised, sandals flapping, eyes closed. You hesitate. Then someone pulls you in. It's the fig vendor. She grins. You laugh, surprised, and suddenly you're spinning your tunic, fluttering like a flag, your legs remembering rhythms they forgot they knew. The square becomes a blur of light and motion. The fire crackles, the lyre sings, and everything else fades. The aches in your shoulders, the grime under your nails, the salt on your skin from weeks of sweat, they don't matter here. For this brief moment, you're not just surviving Athens. You're living it. You dance until your legs shake and your chest burns with laughter. Then you drop beside the fire, catching your breath, still grinning. Someone passes you a cup. You raise it not in a toast, but in gratitude to the city, to the gods, to this stupid, sacred, sunburnt life. The firelight flickers across familiar faces, neighbors, strangers, people you've argued with, borrowed from, stepped over, held up. Together, you form the story of this place, a mosaic of cracked tiles and stubborn hope. Eventually, you stagger home barefoot, now your sandals lost to dance or maybe to the gods. Your feet sting, but it doesn't matter. Inside, your family sleeps. The coals are low. The cat is curled into a ball of indifference. You collapse onto the mat, breath still catching in your throat, like a child who's laughed too hard. The stars are still visible through the tiny square of your window. And for the first time in days, you don't care what tomorrow brings. You gave today everything, and it gave something back. You wake late. The sun's already high, slanting through the window like a nosy relative peeking in to judge your life choices. Your mouth is dry. Your legs are sore. You're pretty sure you danced a hole in your tunic, and one of your toes looks like it lost an argument with a cobblestone. Totally worth it. Your mother gives you a look as you shuffle to the water jug, equal parts you're a grown adult, and don't you dare throw up on my floor. You raise a hand in mute surrender, drink deeply, and sit. The city is quieter today. The day after a festival always is. The stalls open slowly. The arguments start softer. Even the dogs bark with a little less conviction. People are tired, satisfied, hungover in spirit, if not in body. But you can't loaf around forever. You've got another errand to run, this time for the neighbor with the mysterious uncle and the mysterious illness. Again, apparently, he's feeling better. And now he wants to visit the Asclepieion, the healing sanctuary dedicated to Asclepius, god of medicine. He wants to sleep there, to dream. You raise your eyebrows, but say nothing. Plenty of Athenians believe in dream healing. If you ask the priests, dreams are just the gods whispering in pictures. If you ask your friend who once dreamed about a singing donkey and a bowl of garlic, it's a mixed review. Still, the Asclepieion is sacred. Built on the south slope of the Acropolis, it's where the city's sick come not for surgery or poultices, but for presence. Pilgrims fast bathe and sleep on stone benches in the hope that the god will visit them in dreams and prescribe a cure. You've never been, but today you're going. The neighbor's uncle is already waiting by the gate, wrapped in a clean tunic that doesn't quite hide the tremble in his hands. You nod. He nods. You walk. It's a quiet, slow procession, just the two of you. The city hums in the distance, but this road feels removed, steep, sacred calm. The sanctuary comes into view. It's simple, peaceful. Columns open courtyards, shaded porticos, an altar at the center blackened with old offerings. The smell of incense clings to the stone like perfume to an old robe. You both bow slightly at the entrance, unsure if it's habit or reverence. An attendant meets you, guiding the uncle toward the abaton, the sleeping chamber. He's told to purify himself, to make an offering to lie down with hope in his heart and clean feet. You wait outside. Nearby, a woman sits with her daughter whispering prayers and rubbing oil onto the girl's swollen knee. A man with bandaged eyes murmurs to himself. A priest chants softly in the shade, his voice rolling like water over worn marble. This is not loud healing. It's not dramatic. It's patient, expectant, sacred in its slowness. You sit on a bench beneath a fig tree watching sunlight filter through the leaves. You think of your own aches, your sore toe, your stiff back, your general sense of being aged beyond your years at 20-something. No one offers you a cure, but you don't feel sick anymore. Historians still debate whether dream healing at places like the Asclepieian ever actually worked. Were the dreams real? Were the healings psychosomatic? Was the entire thing just an expensive nap with better PR? But here, now you understand something. The scrolls don't always say. People came not just for healing, but to be heard, to be still, to be seen by the gods and by each other. Eventually, the uncle emerges, slowly, quietly. He says nothing, but he walks with more steadiness than before. You don't ask what he dreamed. That's between him and Asclepius. You walk him home as the light begins to shift, softening from the midday blaze into something gold-edged and drowsy. The streets are still slow. The vendors are still tired. Someone's singing off-key from a rooftop, and no one tells them to stop. Back home, your mother hands you a bowl of lentils. Again. This time, you eat without complaint. Your sister is poking a loaf of bread like it insulted her. Your father snores in his chair. The cat has stolen a fish head from somewhere and glares at anyone who dares challenge its throne. You sit, you rest, and for a moment you think about what healing really means. Maybe it's not about feeling brand new. Maybe it's about walking home slowly with someone who didn't think they'd make it through the night. Maybe it's about the silence that doesn't need to be filled. About the bench under the fig tree. About a dream you'll never hear and a God who says nothing but still listens. You stretch out on the mat and breathe in deep. The city breathes with you. And for tonight, that's enough. You wake to rain. Not a thunderous storm, just a gentle, steady tap on the clay tiles above your head. The air smells of wet stone and turned earth, a rare and precious relief. You lie still for a moment, listening to the rhythm of it, letting it soak into your skin without ever touching you. Your sister is already up, arms outstretched in the courtyard, spinning slowly in the drizzle like a worshiper in a temple made of sky. The cat glares from the doorway, soaked and vengeful. Your father grumbles something about roof leaks and curses Poseidon under his breath. You smile. Rain in Athens doesn't just water the crops, it rewrites the whole city. Dust becomes mud, hard-packed paths turn to slick mosaics of clay and puddles, and everything smells different, cleaner, deeper, like the city has remembered it was once young. You step outside, barefoot, the stones cool beneath your feet. Rain pats your shoulders, seeps into your tunic, and instead of discomfort, it feels like baptism. You have no assigned task today, no errands, no deliveries, no latrine duty, thank Athena. So you walk. The agora is quieter under gray skies. Fewer vendors, more cloaks. Conversations held under overhangs murmured like secrets. Someone's using an overturned amphora as a seat, watching the rain pool in the cracks of the flagstones like they have discovered a new form of entertainment. A philosopher is lecturing no one in particular, beneath a cloth canopy. His scroll is soaked. His beard is wetter. But his passion is undiminished. The soul, he declares, is like this city, complicated, dirty, and prone to leaks. Someone nearby claps, possibly sarcastically. You keep moving, past the closed olive stall, past the stonecutter shop where a new gravestone leans half-carved against the wall, past the little alley where that one goat always waits, watching the world like it knows too much. You find yourself on the slope below the Acropolis again. From here, the rain makes the marble gleam like the gods gave the city a polish. The temples stand as always stoic and enormous. But today in the quiet, they feel closer, less divine, more human, built not just with stone, but with aching backs and muddy hands. You take shelter under an overhang, sharing a space with a boy no older than 10 soaking wet and humming to himself while drawing lines in the mud with a stick. What are you making, you ask? A sea battle, he replies. This one's my fleet, that one's Sparta. You nod, deeply impressed. You're winning. Obviously, he says, flicking a droplet of water at the enemy ship. You sit together in companionable silence. The boy eventually stands, bows dramatically, and runs off into the rain, leaving his muddy battlefield to be washed away like yesterday's worries. You stay a little longer. Historians still argue whether ancient Athenians saw weather as divine communication or just inconvenient water. But when you sit here watching the clouds roll in over the city, you understand why they believed in gods behind every breeze. The rain slows, the air is damp and heavy, but the light is soft, now filtered through clouds like Athena herself. Dim the sun for everyone's comfort. You wander home slowly. A neighbor invites you in for a cup of warm wine. You accept. Her home smells of cinnamon and damp wool. You sit by her hearth, drink quietly, and listen to her talk about her daughter's upcoming wedding and how her husband still doesn't know how to fold a tunic properly. You laugh. She doesn't. It's a serious issue. When you leave, the rain has stopped. The streets glisten. A few puddles reflect the columns of temples and the crooked walls of homes in equal clarity. You step carefully, avoiding the deepest ones, though your sandals are already soaked. At home, the fire is lit. Your mother has made something simple: onion stew with chickpeas and flatbread warmed on a stone. It's delicious in the way only rain day food can be. You eat slowly. No one talks much. The rain has softened more than the streets. It's softened everyone's voice. Later, your father tells a story about when he was your age and a thunderstorm flooded the entire agora. He claims he saw a fish swim past the assembly steps. Your mother rolls her eyes, but you want it to be true. Athens underwater. Democracy on a raft. Philosophers arguing about the ethics of bailing water. After dinner, you sit by the window. The cat curls into your lap. Outside, the last drops of rain fall one by one like a slow farewell. You watch the city breathe. Steam rises from rooftops. Lamps flicker to life. Somewhere, someone sings not well, but with conviction. You lean your head against the window frame and feel the rhythm of the day slowing inside you like a heartbeat syncing with the weather. Not every day here is dramatic. Not every day is about war or theater or ceremonies. Some days are just rain, just walking, just being still long enough to hear your own thoughts echo against wet stone. And in a city like this, noisy, proud, restless, that might be the rarest kind of miracle. The next morning the sky is dry again, but the city hasn't quite shaken the rain. The air is cooler, laced with the scent of wet earth and faint wood smoke. Your tunic, hung overnight near the hearth, is finally dry, though it now holds a permanent crease in a spot that makes it look like you're perpetually slouching, which, to be fair, you usually are. You step outside, and the streets feel refreshed, almost smug. The dust has been tamped down. The stones gleam slightly, and the chickens seem in unusually high spirits. Even the goat you always avoid looks like it's reconsidering vengeance. Today, you're helping with grain delivery in honor according to the man who voluntold you for it. The city eats thanks to us, he said proudly, then handed you a sack of barley heavier than your future. You're paired with another delivery runner, a girl your age with a braid that reaches the middle of her back and a gaze like she's already survived everything Athens could throw at her. Try not to drop anything she says, tossing a full sack over her shoulder with practiced ease. You grunt in response and lift your knees, wobbling like they forgot how to be useful. The two of you set off navigating the narrower streets of the city, dodging people carts, one extremely aggressive rooster, and a couple arguing about whether Poseidon blesses bakers or just fishermen. Classic Athens. The delivery is for the communal granary, a public stockpile that's overseen by a man who takes his job very seriously, and his sense of humor not at all. You reach the granary, drop the sacks near the entrance, and watch as he inspects them with the intensity of a priest examining sacred scrolls. This one has a split seam, he mutters, pointing at your bag. You open your mouth to respond, but your partner beats you to it. So does your robe, she says. A pause. Then, to your amazement, the man laughs. Just once, short and sharp. He waves you both inside. You help stack the barley sack after sack, sweat beating along your spine. The granary smells like dust, old grain, and just a hint of mouse. You try not to think about that last part. Once done, you step outside again, arms trembling slightly. The girl with the braid offers you a slice of dried apple and sits on a stone ledge, legs swinging. You're better than the last one, she says. Better how he tripped twice and sneezed into the grain. You make a note to never sneeze again. The two of you share the apple watching the city move. Even on grain day, Athens never stops humming. Somewhere, a boy is reciting lines from Euripides with theatrical flair, hoping to earn a coin. A donkey refuses to cross a street, and three grown men try to reason with it. A vendor yells about cucumbers like he's announcing a royal decree. Your partner tells you she wants to travel one day, Delphi, maybe Rhodes, anywhere with fewer lectures and more sea breeze. You nod. You've never been beyond the hills, not because you don't want to, just because the city never lets you go that far. Eventually she stands, dusts off her tunic, and slaps you on the back hard enough to nearly unhinge a rib. Same time next week, you nod, not quite sure if you agreed or if you were just recovering from the slap. You walk back toward your district arms, still buzzing from the morning's labor legs, aching in that way that says, you did something real today. You smell like grain and effort, but no one flinches when you pass. This is normal. This is honest. Historians still argue whether the Athenian granary system was efficient or just theatrically controlled chaos. There were inspections, inventory as guards, but also missing stock, unexpected shortages, and the occasional rat the size of a small philosopher. But what mattered wasn't perfection, it was the process. Citizens feeding citizens. A reminder that the city was only as strong as the stomachs it filled. At home, your mother nods approvingly when she sees the sweat marks on your tunic. Your father says barley's fine, but have you ever tried lifting wine, and laughs at his own joke? Your sister asks if the girl with the braid was pretty. You pretend not to hear. Lunches, onions, bread, and a scrap of cheese that might have belonged to a mouse in a past life. It tastes better than anything you've had all week. Afterward, you lie down under the awning outside, watching a lone cloud drift across the sky. It looks vaguely like a sandal. You're too tired to decide if that's symbolic. You fall asleep for a bit, arms crossed, the grain sack soreness blooming into something oddly satisfying. When you wake, it's later than you thought. The sun's dropped lower, bathing the streets in amber. Voices echo from the agora, someone reciting law, someone else yelling about fish prices. Probably the same someone from last week. You smile, you stretch and walk, you pass the granary again. The door is closed now, sealed until tomorrow, but you imagine the sacks inside stacked high. Heavy? Yes, but solid, like the city itself. And for once, you feel the weight of your place in it. Not grand, not heroic, but steady, like barley in a basket, like a single thread in a larger weave. You wake to bird song, not the elegant kind poets write about, more like a group of tiny feathered vandals arguing over who gets to poop on the fig tree first. Still, it's something. A little melody to start the day. The air is dry again and warmer. The puddles from the rain have dried, leaving pale outlines like faded chalk on the stones. You stretch, feeling the familiar stiffness in your back. If your spine creaks any louder, someone might think you're trying to play a lyre with your vertebrae. Today there's no pressing task. And that might be the most dangerous thing of all, because free time in Athens often turns into please help with this highly inconvenient thing. And sure enough, within moments of stepping outside, a neighbor calls you over. Quick favor, she says. The phrase is cursed. No favor is ever quick. She gestures toward her home. My cousin's son, you know, the one who thinks he's a philosopher, has gone missing. Again. He said he was going to visit the Piraeus port and hasn't come back. Can you check? You sigh, smile, nod. Of course. So now you're going to the port. The Piraeus is about 5 miles from the city center. That's 5 miles in sandals held together by yesterday's optimism. You brace yourself and start walking, passing the city gates, joining the well-worn road that threads its way toward the sea. It's busy as always. Merchants hauling carts, slaves balancing amphorae donkeys, giving everyone attitude. You pass travelers from all over, Egyptians, Phoenicians, Persians, all wearing expressions that say, Athens is interesting but also confusing. The road dips and curves, and suddenly the scent of salt hits your nose. Then you see it, the Piraeus. It's like a different world. The wide expanse of the harbor stretches before you, sunlight sparkling off the Aegean. Ships bob at anchor, sails furled, ropes creaking. Vendors shout in a dozen accents. The air is thick with brine fish, wine, and wet wool. You weave your way through the chaos. A man is trying to sell you a magic eel. A child tugs your tunic and offers to watch your sandals for a price. You decline both with a polite but firm no, and duck into a shadowed alley. You eventually find your target, a lanky teen with wild hair, a scroll tucked under one arm, and a half-eaten pomegranate in the other. He's mid-rant about Plato's misuse of metaphor. You clear your throat. He looks up. I was just about to come back. You raise an eyebrow. Truly, I just needed to confirm something with the dock workers about metaphysical dualism. And Biggs, you sigh and herd him toward the exit like a sheep with big philosophical dreams. The walk back is longer, partly because he stops every few feet to point at something and say, "Doesn't that feel like injustice?" Eventually, you reach the city gates again. You return him to his aunt, who hands you half a loaf of fresh bread in thanks, and mutters that she's building a shrine to Hermes just to keep track of him. You eat the bread on the way home. It's crusty, a little burnt, and perfect. Back in the agora, the energy has shifted. It's that odd middle-of-the-week lull where nothing major is happening, and everyone pretends that's relaxing. You sit by a public fountain, washing the sea dust from your hands. The water is cool. A pair of girls pass by, giggling over something a priest said. A man mutters to himself about the price of pickled onions. A dog chases a feather like it's training for battle. You lean back against the stone. The world hums quietly around you. Historians still argue whether the connection between Athens and the Piraeus was more economic or strategic. The truth, as always, is both. The port kept the city alive. Food, trade, soldiers' ideas all flowed through that salt-soaked artery. Without it, Athens would have been smart, proud, and very hungry. You watch a small boy lower a reed into the fountain pretending to fish. His older sister tells him the gods will be angry if he catches a nymph by accident. He drops the reed and runs. You smile. Later, you head home. The sun is lower now, casting long shadows that make the narrow streets feel like winding hallways. The heat has mellowed. The breeze has returned. Your sister is sitting outside, polishing a cracked cup and humming. Your mother is inside, listing everything that still needs to be done. Your father is asleep in the chair again, feet up, mouth open, dreams probably featuring heroic arguments about taxes. You sit beside your sister. She hands you a fig. You bite into it, sweet, sticky, perfectly ripe. You don't say much. You don't need to, because today you walked the long road to the sea, navigated the noise, returned a rogue philosopher, and still made it back before supper. And in a city like Athens that makes you more than a citizen. It makes you reliable. You wake before sunrise again, not because anyone told you to, but because your body has apparently decided that sleeping in is a luxury for Spartans. The air is cool and dry. The house is still. Even the cat hasn't moved from its spot by the hearth, curled in on itself like a furry amphora of contempt. You rise slowly, stretch your sore limbs, and tiptoe out into the courtyard. The first light of dawn is just beginning to color the sky, a soft gray giving way to gold. You sit on the edge of the basin and splash water on your face, watching the ripples spread like tiny earthquakes across the surface. Today, you're not working. Not officially, but a friend, one of your few with actual ambitions beyond not falling into an open sewer, has asked you to come with him to the assembly. Not as a voter. You're not eligible yet, but as an observer, a listener, a student of chaos. You meet him near the Pnyx Hill, where the assembly convenes. He's already chewing on a reed like he's a philosopher. His tunic is cleaner than yours. His sandals are tied properly. You feel vaguely offended by his competence. Big vote today, he says. They're arguing over military funding. Again. Does it ever end? No. That's democracy. The Pnyx is already bustling. Men are filing in, some yawning, some shouting. You find a spot on the stone steps, sitting with your back straight and eyes alert, trying to look like someone who understands everything being said. It begins. A herald calls for silence. A priest offers a quick blessing, waving a handful of laurel leaves. Then the speakers take turns at the bema, the raised platform where words either soar or crash in flames. First up a general with a voice like a trumpet and a face that looks carved from driftwood. He argues for more ships, more soldiers, more taxes. The crowd murmurs. Next, a farmer with a thick accent and thicker eyebrows who insists Athens should invest in grain storage and stop wasting money on spears. He's booed. He yells back. A man behind you claps enthusiastically every time someone says wheat. Then a poet. Because of course there's a poet. He begins with a metaphor about oaks and shadows and the heart of the polis. It's beautiful. It's confusing. No one knows what his actual point is, but they all nod anyway. Your friend leans over. That's Philon. He always speaks in riddles. Last month, he proposed a bill about the moral taxation of dreams. You pretend you're not impressed. Historians still argue whether Athenian democracy was truly inclusive or merely performative. But here on this hill, watching ordinary men take the stage and shape policy with nothing but words and nerve, you feel the weight of it, the ambition, the absurdity, the hope. Even if you can't vote, you can see, you can hear, you can remember. Eventually someone shouts about Sparta. That always gets attention. Sparta doesn't have votes, he cries. Sparta has discipline. Sparta doesn't have socks, someone yells back. Laughter erupts, even the herald chuckles. The final speaker proposes a compromise. Fewer ships, more grain, less shouting. The crowd murmurs, some nod, a few groan, a vote is called, hands rise, the herald counts. And just like that, the decision is made. Democracy in action. Messy, glorious, mildly ridiculous. You and your friend leave the Knicks as the sun climbs higher. He's energized, inspired, ready to join a political club. You're just hungry. You stop at a food stall and buy 2 roasted chickpea patties wrapped in fig leaves. He pays. You eat. You both sit on a stone bench, chewing slowly. I'm going to speak next time, he says. Good luck, you say. You don't think I'll do it. I think you'll do it, you say. I just don't think they'll listen. He laughs. They rarely do. You part ways near the agora. He heads toward his study group. You wander toward the fountain again. Rinse your hands and watch the clouds drift slowly above the temple roofs. The city breathes. Later that afternoon, you help your sister gather kindling near the edge of town. You joke about your political ambitions. She tells you the goat you dislike tried to eat her sandals again. She won. Barely. You return home with your arms full of wood and your mind still lingering on the voices of the morning. Dinner is light. Lentils again. But someone brought grapes from the countryside, and the sweetness makes it feel like a celebration. You eat slowly, savoring each bite. Because maybe, just maybe, you've learned something today. That in Athens everyone speaks, not everyone is heard. But if you keep listening one day, you'll know exactly what to say. You wake to the sound of a flute, thin and slightly out of tune, drifting in through the window like a dream half remembered. It's early again, but you don't mind. The day already feels like it might go easy on you. There's a kind of hush outside, as if even the city knows to tread lightly after so many long weeks of loudness. Your muscles are still sore from hauling wood, and the scratch across your arm from yesterday's goat standoff is now itching with the intensity of divine punishment. You scratch it, immediately regret scratching it, scratch it again. Breakfast is leftover bread, hard as pottery, and a small bowl of wine you water down just enough to feel sophisticated. You dunk the bread and eat slowly, staring at the cat, who is staring back, unblinking, as if evaluating your soul. Today, for once, you aren't asked to carry, fetch, deliver, or clean. Which means, of course, you end up doing something entirely different, guiding a group of medic children around the city as part of a civic hospitality day. You are essentially a tour guide. The request comes from a family 2 alleys over a cloth merchant whose brother's children have never seen the Acropolis. They're inquisitive, she says. You hear fierce and filled with too many questions. Still, you agree. So now you're herding 4 children ranging from extremely curious to extremely sticky through the streets of Athens, trying to keep them from poking market animals, licking statues, or getting into fights with each other over who gets to be Socrates. You begin at the agora, pointing out the stoa and the various stalls. The youngest girl asks why the philosophers all look sad. They're thinking you say they look like they lost a fig. Same thing. You pass the temple of Hephaestus, its columns weathered but still majestic, perched on the slight rise to the northwest. You tell them about the god of fire and craftsmanship, how he limped through Olympus and still forged the weapons of gods. The middle boy asks if Hephaestus ever hit anyone with a hammer. You say probably. He nods, impressed. At the Pnyx, you explain how men gathered to vote and speak. Can we vote, asks the oldest. No, you say. Why not? You sigh. Ask me in 10 years, and be male, and own land, and not have parents from anywhere else. There's a pause. That sounds unfair. You smile. Yes, but you're already smarter than half the assembly. You stop to eat lunch bread, dried figs, and a bit of soft cheese. You share what little you brought, and the kids immediately begin arguing over whose fig is the stickiest. You stare into the distance and consider becoming a hermit. In the afternoon, you take them to the foot of the Acropolis. You don't go up, it's too hot, too steep, and honestly too much. But you point up at the Parthenon. They fall quiet. Even sticky children understand awe. You explain Athena's gift to the city, an olive tree born from the ground with one strike of her spear. You tell the tale of how she won the city's favor over Poseidon, who offered salt water and horses. Why would anyone want a horse instead of olives, the smallest one asks. Because they've never fallen off a horse, you say. They giggle. You feel oddly proud. Historians still argue whether these civic tours were common in Athens or romanticized by later writers. But you understand the value now. This city, its noise, its stone, its smoke, is confusing even to those who live in it. To understand it sometimes, you need someone to walk with you, to point and say this mattered. You bring them home before sundown. Their parents thank you with a small basket of eggs and a hug that's far too sincere for how often you had to say, "Don't eat that, it's ceremonial." You head home slowly. The sky is already going soft pink and gold smeared across it like a painting done by a god in a hurry. The city glows in this light cracked stone and fading paint, turning briefly divine. You pass a musician tuning his lyre on the corner. He nods at you. You nod back. You're both tired, both full of stories neither of you asked to carry. At home, your mother is kneading dough. Your father is fixing a broken stool with more curses than nails. Your sister is humming again, plucking feathers from a chicken like it's a meditative ritual. You sit, crack one of your hard-earned eggs into a pan, and let it sizzle while the fire pops and spits. The cat inches closer. You warn it. It doesn't listen. Later, lying on your mat, you stare at the ceiling and think of the children's faces when they looked up at the Parthenon. Wide-eyed, mouths open, hopeful, sticky. You think maybe one day you'll take your own child up that path, point out the gods, tell the stories, share the city, or maybe not. Maybe just being here today was enough to teach, to remember, to be the guide, even for a little while. Today begins not with a rooster or a neighbor shouting or a goat chewing something it shouldn't. Today begins with silence. It's earlier than even the philosophers wake, and the city feels still. No clatter of carts, no dogs barking, just a soft, expectant hush, as if the streets themselves are holding their breath. You rise quietly and step into the courtyard. The sky is pale and cloudless. The air carries a faint scent of smoke and crushed time remnants from last night's offerings, maybe, or just the perfume of a city that's been awake far longer than you. Your mother says it before you do. Eclipses always feel strange. You nod. The word eclipse carries weight here. The priests have warned about it for days. The sun will darken later today just for a while. Not a full disappearance, but enough to make everyone nervous. You're sent to the temple district not for worship, but to help set up benches and water jugs for the crowd that's sure to gather. People want to be near the gods when the sky starts acting strange. You walk through the city as it slowly wakes. More people than usual are carrying sprigs of laurel or muttering quiet prayers. Even the merchants seem subdued. One calls out about figs in a whisper, which is deeply unsettling. You pass a group of children chalking images of Helios onto the wall's rays, chariots, wild horses. One has drawn a large, angry eye. That's what he'll look like when he disappears, the child explained solemnly. Angry. At the temple, you help an old man place folding stools. He grumbles about how the last eclipse caused someone to faint onto a basket of grapes, and they're still finding raisins under the altar. You scared? He asks. Maybe. He nods. Good. It means your bones still work. You finish your chores early and linger near the eastern steps of the Temple of Apollo, shaded by tall columns and flanked by flickering oil lamps. A priestess passes, leaving a trail of rosemary and smoke. A man nearby clutches a scroll and murmurs geometry equations like they might shield him. Time crawls. Then it happens. Not all at once, slowly, softly, like someone dimming a great lantern. The light changes first. Golden edges vanish. Shadows stretch and sharpen. The air cools and a chill runs up your arms. Voices around you fade, and then silence. You look up. The sun's still there, but not right. A curved shadow edges across it like a god's fingertip, blotting out the world. Birds fall quiet. The city freezes. You're not sure what to feel. Awe, fear, insignificance. All three, probably. Historians still argue how ancient people understood eclipses. Some believe them to be omens. Others blame dragons, gods, or angry ancestors. The philosophers tried to explain it with math, with orbits, with diagrams scratched into dirt. But in moments like this, logic is no comfort. Because here beneath the dim sky, you feel like you've been caught in a pause between breaths, like the world is a story and someone has stopped reading mid-sentence. A baby cries. A woman starts singing quietly a hymn to Selene, goddess of the moon. Her voice is thin but steady. It carries. You close your eyes and wait. Minutes pass like hours. Then, as gently as it began, the light returns. Warmth spills back over the stones. Shadows shorten. The city exhales. Someone laughs. Someone else weeps. It's over. You watch the people slowly rise, stretch, gather their things, speak again. The fear has broken, leaving only wonder in its place. The old man from earlier pats your arm. See, he says, still here. You smile. On the way home, the city feels lighter, as if Athens herself shook off a bad dream. A man hands out honey cakes. A child waves a stick like it's a torch of victory. Even the fig vendor is shouting again. The world has remembered itself. At home, your sister runs up to tell you that the cat tried to climb onto the roof during the eclipse. Your mother says it's a sign that the gods have a sense of humor. Your father, of course, slept through the entire thing. You sit and eat a warm bowl of barley stew. You stare at the wall, tracing a crack you've seen 1,000 times but never really noticed before. It looks like a river, or maybe a road. Later that night, you step outside again alone. The stars are bright. The moon is whole, and you realize something. In a city of voices and noise, in a world ruled by gods, men, chants, and rumor, there are still moments that bring everyone to stillness, that remind even the loudest among you how small you are and how precious. You smile and head back inside. Morning again, but different. The sky is back to its usual blue, the light back to its honest gold, and yet the city seems to move more slowly today, like it hasn't quite recovered from watching the sun disappear. You feel it in your own chest, too, that lingering sense of having glimpsed something too big to name. Still, there's barley to grind and gossip to hear, so Athens resumes its rhythm. You start the day helping at the mill. It's a favor owed, or maybe a favor requested. You've lost track of how these things work. The stone wheel grinds with a slow circular groan, as if complaining about its own purpose. You feed in handfuls of barley arms burning after the third round, and try not to breathe in too much of the fine dust rising around you. The miller's daughter chats as you work. Saw a man yesterday yelling at a statue. She says, "Let me guess, Dionysus no Demeter." Said she was stealing his dreams. You nod solemn. Reasonable. Statue didn't respond. Rude. The jokes help. The work is dull but honest. You finish your shift with your shoulders sore, your hands chalky, and your ears filled with stories about cursed figs and love spells gone wrong. You step outside into the full midday light blinking. The streets are back to their usual chaos. A peddler waves a flute made of reeds in your face. You wave it back like a duel. A child tries to sell you a feather for a drachma. You offer him a smile instead. He throws the feather anyway and runs. You walk toward the agora, drawn by the sound of voices swelling. There's a crowd forming near the steps of the Stoa. A man is speaking, a young, energetic, too well-groomed to be trustworthy. He's talking about war, about honor, about how Athens must stand taller, stronger, prouder. People nod, some cheer. You find a spot at the back and cross your arms. His words ring sharp and clear. We are chosen. We are eternal. We must remind the world it's stirring. It's dangerous. Beside you, an older man murmurs. The louder they shout, the more they're afraid. You glance sideways. He's not wrong, you say. The older man chuckles. He just wants someone to sculpt him someday. The speech continues, dramatic, confident, sprinkled with names of heroes and gods. But underneath it, you feel the tremor of fear, the tension of a city that remembers its own fragility. Historians still argue whether these rallies were genuine or just theater. You don't need parchment to know the truth in Athens. Sometimes the difference doesn't matter. Performance is politics. Eventually the speaker finishes. The crowd disperses, buzzing with opinions. Some are angry. Some are inspired. Some are just looking for olives and hoping not to be asked to vote on anything. You wander off, stopping by the fountain to rinse your hands. A woman nearby is offering divination's tiny clay tokens pulled from a bag, each marked with a crude symbol. You draw one without thinking. It's a spiral. What's it mean, you ask? She shrugs. You're not going in circles. You're going deeper. You leave a small coin, not for the wisdom, but for the weirdness. On your way home, you pass a familiar face, the girl with the braid from the grain deliveries. She's crouched near a chicken coop, scowling. What now, you ask? One of them got into the wine jar. Which one? That one, she says, pointing at a particularly smug-looking hen, swaying slightly as it walks. You both watch it in silence. Should we help it? I'm not fighting a drunk chicken, she says. Fair. You sit with her for a while talking about nothing important. How the clouds look like fish. How the figs this year are too dry. How maybe she'll leave the city one day after all. You don't say it, but you hope she doesn't. Athens needs people like her. People who carry grain and fight poultry and don't pretend to be anything more than real. You walk the rest of the way alone. Back at home, the usual rhythms greet you. Your sister is trying to make cheese again. Your father is fixing a net he doesn't own. Your mother is inspecting a jar of olives with suspicion, like she's considering filing charges. You offer to help. You end up shelling chickpeas. It's peaceful, repetitive. You let your thoughts drift. You think about the man shouting at the statue, about the spiral, about drunk chickens and war speeches, about how somehow all of this is your world. Later, as dusk falls, you sit outside on the stone step feet, stretched into the cooling dust. You breathe, watch, listen. There's nothing special about this moment, nothing dramatic. But it feels like the center of something, like the city itself has paused just long enough to acknowledge you. And in that stillness, you smile. Because for all the noise, all the weight, all the daily absurdity, you are still here. And that means something. The night is restless, not because of dreams those you're used to. It's the city that won't sleep. Voices drift in from the street long after moonrise. Footsteps echo on stone. Somewhere, someone is singing badly and probably drunk. A clay jar breaks. A man laughs. Then silence again. You lie awake on the mat, eyes open, listening. Your sister shifts in her sleep. The cat sneezes and immediately pretends it didn't. Your father snores. Your mother murmurs in her dreams. You sit up slowly, quietly, and slip outside. The street is bathed in soft moonlight. Athens, for all its noise and bustle, has this magic after midnight, when the philosophers are quiet, the merchants asleep, and even the dogs have lost interest in barking. The city feels honest. You walk. No errands this time, no obligations, just a need to move. You pass the agora empty now, its columns casting long silver shadows. A man sleeps under the overhang, a half-eaten fig in his lap. The torchlight flickers from a nearby shrine, making the statue of Hermes look like it's breathing. You pause, offer a silent thanks for getting through today, for finding space to walk in the dark. You keep going, up the hill toward the base of the Acropolis. You've never climbed it at night. It's not allowed, strictly speaking, but tonight there are no guards, no crowds, just quiet. So you take the steps slowly, sandals whispering on stone. You reach the top. The Parthenon looms ahead, massive even in shadow, glowing faintly under the moon. You walk its edge, circling it like a pilgrim. Each column casts its own towering shadow. Each step feels like something sacred. You sit at the far edge where the city stretches below you like a map made of fire and breath. Oil lamps flicker in distant windows. The streets are veins of light. The hills in the distance are soft shapes blurred by mist. And the sea out there dark and eternal glimmers under the stars. You've never seen Athens like this, so small, so vast. You think of everyone asleep right now, the bakers, the healers, the mothers, the drunkards, the farmers dreaming of rain, the lovers curled together in courtyards, the widows with empty beds, the children who don't yet know what the world expects from them. All of them part of this. Your city, your strange, loud, brilliant, broken, beautiful city. Historians still argue what made Athens great. Its thinkers, its temples, its art. But sitting here, you think it might be something simpler, that it lets you have this. A moment alone at the top of the world, a place to sit with your thoughts and feel the sky stretch over you like a blessing. You stay until the wind shifts, cooler now carrying the scent of olives and ash. A dog barks in the distance, jolting the silence. The moment passes. You stand, take one last look, then head back down the steps, slowly, carefully, like walking out of a dream you're not quite ready to leave. The streets are still quiet. You reach home, slip inside, lie down. The mat is rough, the straw scratchy, but you don't care, because for the first time in a while, your heart feels still, balanced, and sleep comes gently, not as escape, but as gratitude. The rooster returns, louder than ever, right outside your window, declaring his supremacy over Athens like he's planning a coup. You throw a pebble in his general direction. He ignores it and crows again, victorious. The cat yawns. Your sister groans. Your father, of course, snores through the entire thing like a man at peace with poultry-based chaos. You rise. Your legs are stiff from yesterday's climb, but your mind is clearer than it's been in days. Something about that night, the quiet, the marble, the sky has settled in you like a pebble dropped into a still pool. Today begins with market duty. Your mother hands you a short list scratched onto a wax tablet. Lentils, garlic, thread, and cryptically, don't forget the thing from the old woman with the eyebrows. You know exactly who she means. You walk to the agora, slowly taking in the now familiar rhythm of morning commerce. Vendors shouting over one another, fish sellers with eyes too bright, a man trying to convince passers-by that his donkey speaks 3 languages. You nod politely and avoid eye contact. At the thread seller's stall, you wait behind a pair of women arguing about whether Athena ever wore shoes. One insists she didn't. The other claims she wore sandals woven from moonlight. You quietly pick a neutral-colored spool and move on. Next, the lentils. You know the vendor, an older man with a stooped back and a voice like gravel and honey. He greets you with a grunt and hands over a sack. You look tired, he says. I climbed the Acropolis at midnight. He raises an eyebrow. Alone, you nod. He nods back, slowly. Good. Every Athenian should do it once. Then the garlic which comes from a woman who always smells faintly of goats and has no sense of personal space. She leans in too close breath, warm and intense, and hands you a bundle with a wink that makes you question whether it's for cooking or warding off spirits. Finally, the thing from the old woman. She's exactly where you expect, sitting under a frayed canopy, wrapped in layers, even though it's warm, eyebrows like bird wings. She hands you a small clay jar. For your mother, she says, and tell her to stop pretending she doesn't know what to do with it. You don't ask what it is. You walk home arms full, dodging goats' wagons and a man trying to sell lucky fish bones. The smells of grilled onions and roasting barley mixed with sweat dust and a hint of perfume from a passing priestess. Athens isn't beautiful in the way poets describe. It's alive. That's better. At home, you unload your items. Your mother eyes the jar, raises a brow, and says nothing. Your sister counts the garlic. Your father is still asleep, but the cat has moved to his chest like it owns him. The rest of the day is slow. You help fix the doorframe. You sweep the courtyard. You spend an hour helping your neighbor carry a clay basin that cracks halfway through and has to be held together with twine and prayers. You pause to eat under the shade of a fig tree. The fruit is overripe, sweet and sticky, and your fingers are a mess by the end. You wipe them on your tunic. It's already ruined. Why pretend? In the afternoon, you walk past the theater. Rehearsals are underway for a new comedy. The actors are in partial costume. One wears a goat mask. Another is half dressed as a fish. The playwright is shouting about rhythm and goats not sounding goatish enough. You stay to watch for a while. The jokes are absurd. Half of them are about politicians. The other half are about flatulence. The audience, small scattered, laughs anyway. You laugh too. Historians still argue whether Athenian theater was meant to elevate or entertain. Today it does both. Even the fish man gets applause when he slips on a stone and delivers his lines while upside down. You leave smiling. Later, you find yourself near the edge of town watching the sunset pour gold across the rooftops. You sit on a low wall, legs dangling, listening to the sounds of evening, the rustle of grain, sacks, the chatter of birds, the distant echo of a flute. A boy runs past chasing nothing. A couple shares a fig. Someone starts to sing. And you, just a citizen, just a body in the city, feel strangely whole. You remember the spiral you pulled from the diviner's bag. You're not going in circles, she said. You're going deeper. And maybe she was right. Because every day here, even the ones filled with garlic and cracked basins, feels like another layer peeled back, another glimpse into something older, messier, more human. You're not becoming a hero. You're not changing history. But you're here. You are of this place. And in Athens, that's enough to be remembered. This morning, the light feels different. It's softer, somehow filtered through thin clouds that drift lazily above the rooftops. The breeze is kind, brushing across your face as you rise and stretch the stiffness in your back, a familiar reminder that straw mats were not designed for comfort, but endurance. Your mother is already outside picking herbs from the clay pots that line the courtyard wall. Your sister is singing under her breath while threading a needle tongue poking out in concentration. Your father is still snoring, but you've come to accept that his primary contribution to the household before noon is acoustic. You're not told to do anything today. No errands, no favors, no deliveries or grain hauling. You've done enough lately, apparently, so you do something rare you choose, and you choose to walk, not toward the agora or the temples or the marketplace, but outward toward the edge of the city, where Athens begins to fray into olive groves and grazing fields. You pass neighbors tending goats, children poking ant hills with sticks, a man fixing a broken wheel while muttering curses at both the gods and geometry. You wave. He grunts. The hills beyond the city are quiet, dotted with cypress trees and the occasional shrine. They rise gently, offering a view of the polis below that feels more honest than majestic. From here, the city looks smaller, more human, less marble and myth, more rooftops and laundry. You sit beneath a tree, pulling your knees up and resting your arms. The olive branches sway above you, casting shifting patterns on the ground. A lizard scuttles past your foot. You don't move. The world feels very far away. You take out a piece of old bread, a fig, and a scrap of cheese. You eat slowly, savoring the quiet. No shouting, no sandal-slapping stone, just birds, leaves, and the occasional bleat from a very passionate goat in the distance. It's here in the stillness that you realize something. You've changed. Not dramatically, not like a tragedy's final act, but gradually, gently, like stone smoothed by weather. You've become someone who understands the rhythm of Athens, who no longer flinches at the sound of shouting or the sight of a broken amphora, who can tell when the figs are ready and when a priest is about to launch into a story that will take at least an hour. Historians still argue whether the average Athenian had time for reflection, whether the demands of citizenship, survival, and ceremony left room for stillness. But right now on this hill, you are not average. You are just present, and that is enough. You lie back, staring up at the clouds. One looks like a lyre, another like a sandal. One, you're certain, is shaped exactly like your father's disapproving frown. You laugh out loud. The lizard scuttles back to check on you. You assure it you're fine. Eventually, you make your way back down the hill, the city unfolding again with each step. The rooftops reappear. The noise returns. Someone shouts about olives. Another person counters with something about fish. A philosopher gestures wildly about ethics while nearly stepping in something a donkey left behind. Home. You step inside and are handed a broom. So much for stillness. You sweep the courtyard. Help your sister grind herbs. Dodge your father's questions about whether you've considered joining the Navy. He insists you have the shoulders for it. You disagree. In the late afternoon, a neighbor invites your family to a shared meal. You carry over a small basket of bread and grapes. Their courtyard is filled with voices, clinking cups, and laughter that spills into the evening like wine. A child tries to steal your bread. You pretend not to notice. As night falls, a flute begins to play. A woman sings softly, her voice weaving through the air like a thread through cloth. The stars prick the sky above, and someone lights a small lamp on the altar to Hestia. You look around, faces familiar and strange, cracked walls, shared food, smoke rising toward the gods, or maybe just toward the clouds. You exhale. This is Athens, not just the grand speeches or marble temples or philosophers arguing over syllables, but this, the gathering, the laughter, the quiet pride of a city that despite everything continues. You walk home under starlight, you lie down, limbs tired but light, and just before sleep, you smile. Because somehow, without meaning to, without planning it, you've become part of something bigger than yourself. And the city has become part of you. Morning arrives not with fanfare, but with the soft rustle of a broom on stone. You open your eyes slowly. Your sister is already sweeping the courtyard, humming a tune that doesn't have words, but still says something. Your mother is folding cloth. Your father miraculously is awake before you and sipping wine like it's tea, claiming it settles the nerves before he has to look at the goat again. You rise, stretch. Let the day wrap itself around your shoulders like an old familiar cloak. There's no errand today, no feast, no eclipse, no shouting match at the assembly, no latrine pits to clean, no amphorae to carry, no philosophical chicken debates. Just a day. And that in its own way feels remarkable. You help shell peas, repair a tear in your tunic, fetch water from the fountain, and wave to the same old man who always claims you're standing in his spot. You both know it isn't, but it's part of the ritual now. Like how the fig vendor always gives you the ugliest one because she says it matches your face, and you thank her anyway. The city continues around you. Children run through the streets shrieking with joy or injustice or both. Someone's teaching a goat to climb stairs. A group of young men practice wrestling moves in the dirt. An old woman sings to herself while pounding herbs with a pestle the size of a table leg. At midday, you climb to the hill just outside the city once more, alone, not for a dramatic view, not for escape, just to sit. You watch the clouds, listen to the wind, close your eyes and hear the heartbeat of Athens in the distance voices. Sandals the occasional crash of something clay meeting something harder. You think back to the first morning you woke up sweating through your tunic, to the day you hauled amphorae until your arms buzzed, to garlic bundles and broken pots and puppet shows with pigs pretending to be Odysseus, to the eclipse, to the quiet night at the Parthenon when the city breathed in unison. You think about the spiral you pulled from that cloth bag, the one that meant you weren't going in circles but deeper. It makes sense now. Every day here has deepened you, layered you, shaped you not into a hero or a scholar or a statue on a pedestal, but something more enduring, an ordinary person alive in an extraordinary city. Historians still argue what made Athens truly great, but you know the answer now. It's not the wars or the temples, it's the people who live between those things, the ones who carry grain, patch sandals, chase goats, listen to flutes, argue over olives, laugh at bad theater, cry at good poetry, watch the stars without knowing their names. You, at sunset, your family gathers around the fire, the cat curls at your feet, your sister sings that same wordless tune, your mother hums along, your father tells a story you heard a dozen times, but tonight you let him finish without interrupting, because it matters more that he tells it than that you correct it. You eat, you smile, you let the day slip gently into night. And as the stars bloom above the rooftops once more, you lie back on your mat and breathe in the warmth of your home. You close your eyes, and sleep finds you easily, not as an escape, but as a reward for living, for listening, for being part of a city that is messy, sacred, ridiculous, and real. Athens. You wouldn't last a day, they said, but you did. You lasted many. And if you're lucky, you'll wake up tomorrow and do it all again. And now, dear listener, it's time to let the last of the voices fade. The streets of ancient Athens have grown quiet. The sandals are tucked away. The amphorae rest. Even the fig vendors, the philosophers, the children with chalk-stained fingers, all of them are asleep beneath the soft hush of night. You've walked the alleys. You've tasted the barley. You've survived the crowds, the heat, the noise, the long days, and strange customs. But most of all, you've been here. You've sat beneath olive trees, counted stars from sacred hills, and felt what it was like to live not as a myth or a name in a scroll, but as a person, breathing, listening, laughing, enduring. Now there's nothing left to do. Let your breath slow like the fading coals of a hearth after dinner. Let your muscles soften like wet cloth laid flat to dry. Let your thoughts dissolve into the same quiet that wraps the city at night. And imagine just for a moment that you're still there on that hillside, watching the lights of Athens flicker one by one like stars drifting down to earth. You're safe. You're warm. You're part of something. The world is sleeping now, and so should you.